poppin', everybody? Welcome to, well, this isn't Culture Pop, but it's our PBC Book Club. And this is going to be our our third episode, a third book that we're going over. I'm starting winning here, just winning, absolutely. But as we've been promoting tonight, we're going to be discussing Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 1, which is really well renowned as being a classic and a great. And tonight we're going to dive into it to see, is it really a classic and is it really great? But with me tonight, I've got a awesome panel here, a couple of new faces to the channel, so I'm excited to have them here to give their insight. But I'll just go down the list and we'll introduce everybody. So first up, right below me, I have Sammy Threepeat. What's up, brother? How are you?
Good. I'm really excited to be part of this one. I'm sad I missed out on the last one on what is it? God Loves, Man Kills. But I mean, this is a banger. This is a seminal run. I think it's one of the most important runs in comics, to be honest. It's maybe besides like Frank Miller's Daredevil run. I mean, there's some great things going on in this comic, so I can't wait to break into it with you.
Yeah, there's some great things going on in this decade, man. Like, let's be honest.
Really.
Also joining us, returning, we've got Jim from Weird Science. Jim, how are you, sir?
Lovely. I actually was supposed to be on last time, but then everybody bailed on the first recording of it, and then I couldn't make the second, so I missed out. I did read it again, though, but yeah.
It's okay. It happens.
Yeah.
We're just glad that you're alive.
I am alive.
You are alive.
To go. I am alive.
For sure.
For now. Maybe not the whole time, but for now I am, yes.
For those that don't know, almost every other Saturday we get like updates on Jim's life and how he almost died. So any chance that he's here with us, we're happy that he's here.
It's always bonus. We're in bonus area of my life right now.
Absolutely. Also joining us, we have another new face to the channel, Salty Traveling Sea, a man with immense wisdom. So I'm happy to have him here, and he frequents the chat almost every Tuesday, which is awesome. But Salty, How are you, brother?
I'm all right. I break your balls whenever I can, and of course I mostly just come to see the other cool people and don't really pay attention to what you have to say, Josh. But it's great to be on the panel and hang out with you guys. So thanks for the invite.
I make a point to bring people on that are smarter than I am, so I can look like I'm halfway. Max is making a face. Max is not included in that description, so
I'm a crayon eater, so it doesn't.
That's right.
Crayons.
Speaking of Max, we have Max here, and I'm gonna let everyone promote their stuff at the end of the show. But I'm happy Max is here because Max went from like, "Oh, I'm pissed about this whole demonetization thing. I don't know anymore," to like, "So I'm gonna have 3 YouTube channels."
Yeah, I was like, okay, what's the move here? Do I completely step back and just turn away from YouTube and just be like, "Hey, demonetization was the realization that I needed to say I'm done," or do I just work even harder and completely rebrand and just go, you know what? No, I'm just going to do 3 separate projects and do what I want to do and not have to worry about, monetization. And if I get it again, sweet. If not, I have creative outlets. So it's just, it's been nice. But thanks for having me on, man. I am going to be a learner tonight. Josh, the first time I was on your book club was Superman for All Seasons. And Superman's one of my favorite superheroes of all time, but I'm a Marvel guy, and yet I still come on your show for these DC books. What the hell? So, no, I'm excited about this one, man. I've never read this before, so all of my takes are going to be like first time read throughs. So, like I said, I'm just gonna sit back and kind of, you know what? I'm gonna be Swamp Thing, where he's laying down and he's just being engulfed by the green, where he's swamped, and I'm just going to infuse myself with y'all's knowledge, because I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. Because
start growing cucumbers.
We're not going to eat you.
I won't eat your eyeball.
Okay, good. Whew.
But no, I want you to contribute because I think there's a lot of stuff that you might bring up that we might not think to mention or reference because we know so much of the lore and the history that you're like, so I don't really, and there's potentially going to be people watching this that this is the first time reading this, or maybe it gets recommended, they read it and they're like, I don't understand, and come watch a video. So that take will be good. I like having different takes here. I try to get a good mix of people with different opinions. So.
Cool.
And then last but not least, we have my main man, the guy that is with me every Tuesday night. We have Dolan, aka Drew, aka I Write Comics. What's up, dude? How are you?
Hi. I'm good. Just hanging out, reading comics and posting some stuff. And I'm very psyched to talk Swamp Things. I love Swamp Thing.
Hell yeah. And we'll potentially talk about the version of this book that you have because I'm jelly.
Yeah, so on top of that, so just to let people know that I have done a deep dive on this run. 3-4 deep dive on interviews, the behind the scenes stuff, the production, how it all came about, how it started, how it wound up. So as we go along the way, if you guys have questions, I may have some answers.
Hell yeah. Before we jump into the contents of the book, we're going to hit the comments section and say hello to a few people. We do have Cajun Corey in the house. Finally, a book that has representation for me. Yes, that little swamp buggy, Cajun Corey, has someone else who can understand him that isn't Kyle when Kyle is drunk, or me. So I'm glad you're getting some representation, Corey. We've got Jamin D in the house with the rock on. Thanks, dude. Rock on to you as well. Cajun Corey again, Josh making sure everyone has swamp ass. Yeah, nothing weird about that at all. And of course, Max, having to make it even more weird, says, my ass is particularly swampy tonight. I don't really want to know, but okay,
TMI.
Just, keep some fresh underwear around, buddy. Salty is also in the comments coming in with potentially the best comment of the night. Everyone hit that like button. Yes, please. It just helps with the algorithm. Comments throughout the night help, and then comment after the stream as well. So, and last but not least, we have Cannoli Sasquatch. Hey, people, this Alan. Oh, God, I can't read. Hey, people, this Alan Moore run of Swamp Thing books were phenomenal. Yes, agreed. I'm glad we're starting this. We'll get through the others at some point eventually. But I love when Cannoli comes in and comments on things because he really didn't start reading comics until the past year. And he's just blowing through stuff. The amount of money this man has to have spent within the past year on trades and omnibus. I'm surprised he hasn't lost his home yet. But
and he's been picking bangers too.
He asked for a list, and I don't think he was expecting the tism that I gave him because I gave him a list with requirements in it. So
what I love about that is that he's being spoiled by some of the best stories in one of the best storytelling mediums ever. So that he's going to be like, well, let's see what's going on in 2020. And then he's going to be like, what is this? So
he's going to hit that new 52 brick wall.
Because at some point there's he may run out of classic hits, classic trades. And then he's going to go, well, let me start, subscribing to a monthly poll and be like, this is garbage. So, Cannoli, just enjoy what you have right now.
We just need to
tell him. It's going to hit them all at once, too, because it was just one day he'll just be out there like, yeah, man, I just read Dan Slott. And
Dan Slott, I mean, that would still be a godsend compared to Stephanie Williams or or Joanne Starer, Vita Ayala.
Oh, dude.
What's Mary Jane's boyfriend's name right now? Was it
Paul?
Paul.
Yeah, that asshole.
Everyone hates Paul.
I do have a commenter that is addressing the rest of the panel and not me, but it's Boosh, and Boosh says, "Hello, people smarter than Josh." So we love us some Boosh up in this house. We also have George joining us. And Darth Messiah, which we will get to that later, because I do want to be able to talk about Swamp Thing before we maybe jump into him versus somebody else. So tonight we got a couple of topics as normal that we'll go through to kind of discuss the book itself, discuss some of the themes, and kind of go into some final thoughts. I know this is the first time Max has read this. Is this anyone else's first time reading this book?
It's my first time reading, I guess, the run in order. Like anything that I saw, it was like I pieced it together online, or
Fair.
I didn't really. And yeah, so I mean, actually sitting down and reading through it all the way through. But I had read it because I had sent you the list of stuff I bought, and I just threw that on there. So when you were like, "Oh, would you like to discuss this?" and I was like, "Oh my god, I just bought this a month ago." Yes. Well,
I'd reached out to Sammy for last month's book club, and he's like, "Oh, I can't do it. I'm sorry, man." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'll keep you in the loop for future ones." So I came up with this one. He's like, "Dude, I just bought that." I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And then he sends me a list of like 20 books that he just bought. I was like, "Oh shit, okay, well that's a lot." So yeah,
I love it.
I will say before we get into this, and kind of to your point of what you're saying, Sammy, this was written in the early to mid 80s, and it was written in a time before writers started writing for the trade. So yes, you do have overarching stories, but a lot of your plots, your kind of plot focused plot drivers, plots, A plots, B plots. I'm super articulate tonight. They were all kind of like single issue or 2 issues. Like they're pretty snappy, so it's easy to kind of come in and get pieces of this without ever reading the full thing.
yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. And of course, this is written by Alan Moore, the wizard himself, who you may know from things like Watchmen or The Killing Joke, and many, many other things. We'll get into some of that in a second. And we have Stephen Bissette, John Totleben, and Dan Day, and Rick Veitch on the art for this run. So good stuff. I know Drew will have a lot of commentary on the art and artists here throughout the night. So I think we're going to have a full discussion. We have Gooch in the house. What's up, dude? Yo, what's up, everyone? Great book. Hell yeah, it's a great book. And yeah, Gooch giving Sammy some love for his first time on the channel. Salty, I want to throw it to you first because I kind of reached out to everyone and said, hey, if there's anything specific you want to talk about, let me know so I can make a slide.
Yeah.
And you directly mentioned Alan Moore and his work, and then kind of before coming over here. So I'm going to let you kind of take it away a little bit with Alan Moore coming into this book.
Well, being old, I was 14 when this came out in 84. And I remembered the tone of some of the comic books sort of in this vein, because it was very anti-Reagan. You had a lot of and people use the word boomers now, but it really was the baby boomers. So like my parents, the parents of Generation X, and a lot of them were bitter, hippie, wannabe commies. Oh, I hate capitalism, yet they're making all this money, and they got rid of that piece of shit Jimmy Carter, and everybody hates Reagan, but yet they're getting rich and they're happy and they're buying cars and the economy's doing great. And you saw some of that bitter, disaffected bullshit in some American comics to a degree, but not quite as much as this whiny, limey bastard, even at the time. It's interesting that Alan Moore had actually done V for Vendetta in serial form, and it was only in the UK, if memory serves, in a magazine that he'd started. And it wasn't until I think 88 that V for Vendetta came out. And that's what kind of blows my mind. And I didn't know that until very recently, that he wrote V for Vendetta before he did this. And I always thought he did this, and that's why, and then he did V for Vendetta. And then, the Watchmen was in there too. But I just, Alan Moore, it's like we were talking about Neil Gaiman before we went live. I can separate the artist from the art. I think Neil Gaiman's a very different situation for a lot of reasons. Those are just my opinions, but I just thought it was really interesting to look at this. And again, through the lens of being a kid who was 14 when this came out and remembering how it was trendy in the comic books for this subversive leftist, air quotes, progressive boomer bullshit messaging. And you see it in Swamp Thing. There's actually, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, I think it's an issue 1 where you can see what is, to me, a very clear representation of Ronald Reagan in profile in a panel. And it's undeniably Ronald Reagan as a bad guy. And it's just, I don't know, it's just weird things like that. And I'm talking too much, but I think it just has to do with, it's fascinating to see some of these comics that I saw as a kid and then realize 40 fucking years have gone by and compare it to even what I'm reading now. No matter how good it is, what Alan Moore, in the density of what is within one panel on these pages, compared to, you don't get that in 3 or 4 or 5 pages in most comic books, let alone a DC title. So
3 or 4 or 5 issues.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
you're right.
we're talking
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's something I struggle with too, Salty, is separating the art from the artist, because I still struggle with, does Alan Moore actually really like superheroes? I don't know.
Uh-huh.
And
Agreed.
I'll ask the panel, because I know I'd love to hear what you guys think as well. But there are times where I'm like, he reviles, like he hates them. But then there are other moments in like Miracle Man where I'm like, no, he's passionate about them. He understands the inner workings of superheroes and loves
Yeah.
what they stand for. I don't know. It's fascinating, but in terms of his writing style and the richness to it, it never. There are moments where it seems pretentious to me, but then there are other
Mhm.
moments where it just reads super smooth and the character motivations feel like they flow really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about the superhero
I'm
thing?
glad you said hate, because I often think about this too, where especially,
Yeah.
you have works like Watchmen that kind of like flip the whole genre
Mhm.
on its head, and recognizes itself as a medium, which is insane.
Mhm.
Um, but I think you have to have an incredible understanding of something in order to be able to do that, and with that understanding, you're going to have love and hate. So so I think at different points of time in his work, I will say, out of all this, out of all the more that I've read, maybe besides like The Killing Joke or things like that, like single issues. What's the one where Superman has the plant on his chest?
Whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow was
I
what.
think he's talking about the Black Mercy.
Yeah, the
Yes,
Black
The man who
Oh.
has
For
everything.
the minute.
Yeah, the man who has
yeah.
everything. Thank you. I knew there was a man in there. I knew man was, but this to me, with all of his messaging and everything, this feels the most controlled, and it's
Mhm.
probably because he's exploring such like heavy topics, like watching like Alan Holland go through like ego death and all these
Yeah.
things. So like a lot of that bitterness doesn't really seem to like come out here, but it's still there. You definitely get the sense of it, but it's not as prevalent as what you would see in like some of his later work. And he does something. He brings such a magical thing here that very few writers are able to do, which he was able to take something that was previously not his, and probably added like one of the best retcons in comic books ever, and then was also able to leave it open-ended enough where he could hand the baton to somebody else and they could keep going with it. So to take something previously existing and then do a phenomenal job with it and hand it off to someone else, I was like, that's something that you very rarely see. I mean, Grant Morrison can do it. There's a couple guys who can really do it. But there's another thing about him too, where it doesn't feel like when Grant Morrison does stuff like that, it feels wordy, it feels high concept. He's hitting all these high concept like retcons that like something like Grant Morrison would do, but you don't feel like you're being preached to, or that you have to like pull out a dictionary to even remotely understand what the hell he's talking about. So like it's really just lightning in a bottle, and like I have a lot of respect for him. Would I want to hang out with him at a diner? Probably not.
I was gonna.
I do.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think, and not having read this for quite a while, I think that this volume 1 it was like he was channeling Poe in a horror genre, and it was only incidental that the Justice League showed up in the story. And it's almost they feel out of place, and that's what I like about where they're just kind of, they're up on the orbiting the Earth, and they're like, well, what the hell are we supposed to do? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is supernatural shit. Like, well, can you change the molecular structure of the Earth's atmosphere? He's like, dude, no, I can't. We've got essentially, Cthulhu level plant shit going on down here, and there's not much we can do about that. And that's why I think that this, and you see what happens later with Swamp Thing and then John Constantine. And so that's why I hold this opinion of this is the supernatural. This is almost like your eldritch god type stuff. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I do think the superhero stuff is just kind of incidental to what I think is a horror.
Oh yeah, he's unknowingly planting the seeds for Justice League Dark in the early 80s. It's incredible. It's amazing where you have these guys coming down going like, I don't know what the hell we're supposed to do about this. You know who does know what to do? Etrigan knows what to do. That's it's awesome.
Fair, agreed. I was gonna joke when Max was like, "Does he love superheroes or not?" I was gonna be like, "Well, it depends on how many people have come up to him and praised his superhero books." If he's had a lot of people, he's like, "I fucking hate superheroes," and if no one's mentioned it and all they've mentioned are his indie stuff, he's like, "Well, I wrote this too." I
will say. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh.
No. Go.
Super brief. The last thing I'll say on this is even though he introduces the Justice League in this for like just that issue, he still nails their voices.
Yes,
like he still nails their voice.
Yes,
and I'm like, how
do you do that?
How do you do this? How do you go from horror, eldritch, woodland nature attacking, this like weird, fantastical, beautiful retcon, and then go straight to the Justice League Watchtower, and you're nailing Superman's dialogue. Just like it's incredible.
Oh yeah,
so,
he had 30 different like things that he does differently. He's having a psychological break, and you're just like, wow, that's Superman. Like that's it's
What,
incredible.
So you're not supposed to write these characters as a self-insert. Like I shouldn't change Superman to to talk and sound like me.
No,
that'd be great. It was like
where you're talking tonight,
Watchtower, and then they zoom in on Superman. He's got a big long beard, and he's got like a sickle and hammer on his chest,
singing Jethro Tull songs.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
I do wonder if it would have helped if Batman would have climbed in his 500-foot tall dump truck and then raced that through the swamp. Maybe that would have wrecked some shit.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not Scott Snyder. I don't know.
Moving into the book, because we will work through. I do want to go to Max first, since this was his first time reading it. And as you jumped into this first issue, the first issue for this, at least Alan Moore's run, is called Loose Ends, which is fitting. So Max, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, 10 being completely, how lost did you feel going into this first issue?
Oh, I'm going to turn this one up to 11, mate, because I was so lost. I had no idea what was going on. And now, granted, I read the preface at the beginning of the graphic novel, and it says, like, they called Alan Moore up, and he hung up immediately. Thought it was a joke, or like he just didn't even want to do it. But then they asked him again, and he said, "All right, let me take a look." And they gave him the pitch, but that he would have to tie up the previous few issues. I think it was 19 issues that had happened before this. You guys can correct me if I'm
I believe you're correct.
Yeah.
Well,
so
there's also a couple like standalone things where he would like pop up randomly, but it's not
this.
Not
so
important.
This is technically volume 2. You have a whole volume 1 that came out that fills an omnibus plus the 19 issues before Alan Moore.
That's right.
So they had a ton of storytelling that they went through. It was, questionable, but you had, I think it was Lynn Wein that created Correct me if I'm
It
wrong.
was.
Lin Wayne, right? Yeah.
Bernie of the
And he
art.
had done,
Good Bernie.
Bernie
Right
Wrightson.
here. Yeah.
Well, and also it was kind of on the outs, and then the Wes Craven movie saved it, even though
That's
that's not
right.
that great of an
Oh, God.
adaptation.
Yeah.
So much so that
Crazy.
even on the cover, and I actually,
Adrian Barbeau, baby. Adrian.
in one of my long boxes, I have one of these issues, and they actually, so they had like the art, and it says Swamp Thing, and then instead of like having a drawing, they have like a still from the movie, and it's kind of like drawn around. It looks like a weird ass album cover instead of a comic book cover. And yeah, look, it looks like Mad Dogs and Englishmen or something. Like it's not a it's odd. It definitely feels more promotional, but they were just trying to capitalize on that, and thank God they did.
Yeah. I mean, this is go ahead.
Sorry, this is where I want to put it. You brought up the Swamp Thing movie. This is where I want to bring up the first important piece of information is that when Alan, John, and Steve were working on this book, they were one of the lowest, if not the lowest paid creative teams at DC Comics.
Whoa.
Really?
Yes, that is true. That is a fact. And come to find out, it is because of a deal. Paul Levitt said it's the worst deal DC Comics or Warner has ever made. That Michael Uslan and his production team, they bought the rights to Swamp Thing and Batman. So any of the sale, Paul says worst deal. So any of the sales in the book and everything, it went to Michael and his production team. It didn't go to DC. So they figure, why are we going to pay these guys this much more if Michael and his team are making this much money on the sales of the book?
Wow.
Fair. I guess for anyone that is maybe reading this for the first time, or for whatever reason you're watching this and then planning to read it, we're going to discuss spoilers. I don't know why you do that, but there's a lot that takes place leading into this, and when you jump in, you are literally catching the end of kind of its own little mini epic that has taken place. But you have Swamp Thing looking for Arcane to make sure he has died. And the reason for this is Arcane has been like the one villain that's just been ever present in Swamp Thing's history. And Arcane is this guy that's obsessed with immortality. And there were multiple stories where it seemed he had died and he found a way to come back. It seemed he had died and there was a way that he came back. So he become this kind of grotesque monster in his search for becoming immortal. And then you have all the ancillary characters that are around. So you have Abby Arcane, who is now Abby. Is it Cage?
Cable.
Is that
Cable?
There we go.
Cable.
Yeah, Abby Cable and Matt Cable, and they were kind of the ones that were always with Alec on this journey, going through different missions. And Matt was like a former spy agent type character. So you've had all these adventures that have taken place, and this history that's not here, and then you just jump in. And I remember the first time I read this, I was like, dude, this says book 1, but like I'm missing a ton of shit.
What I saw, especially with Matt Cable, I mean, you really kind of got to know what's going on with him going in, because he doesn't look great in these coming issues, and you have to understand that, dude, like he had a lot of psychological damage. Like if you put him in the first run next to this one, they're two different characters.
100. Yeah, I mean it's the same guy. He's just in two completely different. So when he starts off, he's this suave, like debonair, super capable agent, and then he gets caught up in some stuff. They do electroshock therapy on him, hoping that it'll erase his memory. It doesn't, but he just kind of really loses his path afterwards, and then starts getting these mystic abilities that we see in later issues. But yeah, there's a lot of history there that without it can feel rough, and yet somehow, even by the end of this issue, it ends in a way that I'm like, okay, yeah, despite not knowing any of that, I'm on board. So for Max, like, I know you're reading this, you're lost, you're at an 11, you don't know what's going on, but then you get to the end of the issue and they kill Swamp Thing in Alan Moore's first issue. Did that throw you off at all, or were you like, the
death didn't actually startle me too much, because I kind of felt like, well, this might actually be a good starting point then for him to kind of maybe regrow, pun intended, or like, grow from
Get
here.
get repotted.
There we go. Thank you. Yes. Put down some new roots, and but yeah, no, I mean, I will say, when I first started reading this, totally lost, and this was probably the only issue where I felt like, man, Alan Moore, this is really just his pretentiousness showcasing, like he's trying to like reinvent the wheel with all these characters that no one cares about. But I'm like, oh no, give it a chance, because there's clearly, it's like you finish this puzzle, but there are clearly puzzle pieces missing. And I knew that there were things missing that I needed, as a reader, I need to do my due diligence to go read previous issues. So I think if you've read comics before, you'll read this issue and you'll say, oh, I clearly am coming into this at the tail end. So I'm going to give this a shot. Right. But yeah, at once issue, what is it? Once issue 21 hits, it just becomes electric. I mean, it really, that's where he does his finest work.
And the pacing of the story in the panels, in the interior monologue, it's just, did you hear the voice right away? Like, did you just imagine what Swamp Thing's internal monologue was? Like immediately, and then throughout the book, it just sort of stayed there. And I don't want to derail things, but I've often wondered this, guys. Do you think that this volume or this run of Swamp Thing would have been just as powerful if they had chosen some wash and rinse standard DC artist who put in the minimum amount of effort? Do you think that the story was strong enough? Because I kept thinking that. I was like, yeah, Moore's doing great, but obviously comics is a visual fucking medium. Yeah. But it's like, but there were some of those pages when there's those 5 vertical panels and there's more pathos and soul in plot and fucking gorgeous transformative scenery artwork in just those.
I mean,
panels.
even look right here. Look at that diagonal line. Cutting, you know what I mean? Cutting the panels across.
All of this. Yeah, it's like the structure of the panels are integral to the formation of the text in the dialogue. It just made me weep and just remember how and why I fell in love with comics to begin with, and it was really good to reread this. You know?
So Alan, John, and Steve, they had a plan. They wanted to tell a horror story. They wanted to tell horror comics, not superhero comics. That was not their goal. They did not want to tell a superhero story. And I like to believe they succeeded in telling a horror story for the most part. There are points where superheroes come in that they were not happy with. I'll get into the details of that. It's pretty funny. But yeah, they wanted to tell a horror story.
Well, it's crazy because I've been rewatching all my Hammer horror stuff, and I got it on Blu-ray because, of course, you need to have that, the hot, sexy, topless, naked lesbian vampire chicks in 4K. Guys, but it's funny because maybe my brain is so entrained with sort of that horror movie pacing where it's almost like I could hear the horror music in the background in addition to Moore's dialogue and then these pictures, because it really does play out like just sort of your classic horror movie, but not like stab, but just the surreal Cthulhian type stuff.
Sophisticated.
Yeah, well, in body horror as well. I mean,
yeah. Jim, since we're kind of talking about this horror element, is that something that for you kind of helped this book stand out? And do you agree that this wouldn't have landed the way it did without this type of art?
The art really plays a huge part of it. Now, here's the thing, a couple of things with it. I'm not a big horror fan. I am not at all. And yet I still end up loving this because it ends up tying so many other things in with it. And it also it draws you in a different type of way, in my opinion. Now, again, when it starts out in the last issue, like Max, when I first read it, the first time a guy had suggested, when I first started reading it, I had no idea what was going on and didn't even continue. And then the guy kind of got back to me and said, you know, what did you think? I said, I read that first issue. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And then he's like, well, you got to read the next, like the next one's the huge one. So then I read it then, and I'm like, holy crap. And it was just so good. And it just gets you. And again, saying it's horror, it is. I mean, it really is, but it ends up being so much more. So if somebody was listening and saying, oh, I don't like horror at all, it's way beyond just that. It's so good. It mixes so many different things into it.
Yes.
And and it's so good. Now, again, I read this like years ago. And now this time was the first time I actually sat down and read through it like right in a row. And I have a very hard time. I have really bad attention problems, and I had no problems. There's some issues now I can't get through yet. I read all of these and just boom, because it is able to each page have something, even visually, like you're saying about the art.
Absolutely.
Every page has something to grab onto and something to keep you going. And it's done so well.
And what's crazy about, you talked about this holding your interest, is like these are dense issues. They are so much to take in. But it never feels like, you know, sometimes I pick up a James Tynion book and I'm like, oh God, because it's just like a wall of dialogue. And I dread reading through it. And this, I was reading through it, like even what we see here on this left page with the title, like that's quite a bit of dialogue just kind of in those little areas. It never felt too much like it was too much. Like it felt like it was shaping the story. And I think the way he did the internal monologues with the narration, with the actual dialogue, and making sure that the voices were different, but also just the pacing, like how they were speaking to things had a different pace and cadence to it, also really helped. And then you have the visual storytelling, which is great. Like I know we're talking about the page with the slant and he's looking through the window, but even just that top on the next page, those eyes, like I loved the eyes in this book.
I was actually thinking about like clipping that and just making that my new Twitter banner.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
And,
but it's, go ahead.
No, go.
I was just going to say, you talked about the density of information. I think there's another part of that, and it's that at no point does it over explain or spoon feed you jack shit.
Yes.
Like you're not going, oh, okay. You're looking at the panel and you're going, I am proceeding with the story. You know what I mean? And it's like you are, it's almost like the trot of a horse. And it's like you're kind of just, you're going and then you're climbing the terrain. But it's crazy because my brain went right back to, because I'm old again, it went back to how much more dense comic books like this in what I was reading when I was 14 back then in the early 80s. And like, you know, you talk about things like Douglas Adams and then reading Tolkien at that age. And this was just a natural extension, I think, for nerds at this time. I'm going to speak for myself. I considered stuff like this to be a challenge. And you wanted to have your mind blown. You wanted to look up words in the dictionary because, you know, we didn't have a phone, but you got off on that. I did as a nerd, like, holy shit, this is weird. This is deep. This is crazy. And it requires all of your attention to sit with. And I don't know, it triggered little 14-year-old Salty today. And it was just good art rewards observant and intelligent people in this wonderful synaptical orgasmic way. And this did. You know?
Another thing too is the dialogue doesn't feel dated.
Heavy. No.
And to y'all's to y'all's point, I mean, Josh and Drew and even Jim, I mean, we do weekly reviews and videos and live streams, like where we're talking about who's the most notorious one, who has expository dialogue for the sake of expository dialogue, is dumb or is pretentious, but like for dumb people. Oh yes, Josh, please. You have your hand up?
Give me a T.
Yeah, I'll keep going. Oh,
give me an O. Oh, give me a stop being a pussy, Tom King.
Yeah.
What does that spell? Hessler. No, I'm kidding.
Another guy who doesn't rely on the artist. He gets the greatest artist, but yet overexplains everything,
man.
and that is
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah.
So Tom
So-
King is one of these guys who blathers, right? Like just constantly blathering, self-flating, just it's all just to like, oh yeah, look at how great I am, right? And it's so pretentious and it's very like, do I want to
Superficial.
say like superficial, boisterous,
Surface level too.
surface
and
level?
his fans will bring up, oh, he's like Alan Moore, he's Grant Morrison, and things like that. And
God.
But it's
so
Not even
disposable.
close.
It's,
Yeah.
it's,
No.
it's a styrofoam. It's like it's
Yep.
it's a
It's a
styrofoam
cardboard
cutout
cutout of
of a
yeah.
It's like a-
mountain in
it's a
not a
cosplayer.
mountain.
It's like
you
a
know?
cover
Yeah.
band that
Yeah.
can't play.
A
Yeah.
drunk
Yeah.
cover band that
Yeah.
like yeah.
At the Holiday Inn, 4 a.m. in Indiana.
Yeah.
Freebird on a Casio keyboard. Motherfucking Tom King. That's the
Yeah.
most praise you're ever gonna get from me, bro. Okay. Jeez.
Yeah, no, Alan Moore and Tom King shouldn't be in the same sentence,
No.
to be honest.
No.
Well,
Not
and,
at
and like you said earlier, there are things where a little bit of his politics bleed out, and I think a
Thematic,
lot of focus on this was kind of a his unique view on the American dream and what that encapsulates.
Yeah.
And never once did I go, oh crap, like here we go. Like, you don't
Like
feel
I-
like
like-
you're being preached to because he has
like I
something to
said-
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was just one of those things where I remember this is how they hit it in the 80s, when we were all happy and successful and safe and winning the Cold War. They still had to bitch about something, and it was like, oh, you're ruining the environment, and it's like, oh, la, I gotta bitch about something. And so I just
And it's even wilder because I feel like it would be much easier to hang out with Tom King than it would be to hang out with Alan Moore, in real life.
You'd have to go
I'd
through
hang
some sort of hazing or something with
Yeah.
some crazy.
What's
I would drink with both Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman. I just would mix my own drinks, guys. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
100%.
yeah.
If you didn't mix your own drink, you might end up in a clawfoot bathtub in a garden, So
Ooh.
And
I
Aleister
think somebody-
Crowley's
I don't know.
castle.
I don't think they'd want to have sex with me. They might want to harvest my organs, though. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
maybe
What's
This-
wild
magic here.
Yeah.
What's wild that's so interesting, and you guys have mentioned this before about Alan Moore's like writing, is that the dialogue itself isn't heady, right? It's not like
No.
he's not like integrating words into here that I've never heard before. The dialogue reads really smoothly, but yet it's still intelligent, and every word is very impactful. He
Yes.
does this with a lot of he does this a lot in Miracle Man, where he'll equate someone to an animal. So he'll say like he had the eyes of a tiger, or he had the ferociousness of a dragon, and like he'll put those little things in, and I'm like, why a tiger, or why a this, or why a that? And he's very intentional about it. Whereas other writers will put in empty platitudes that make them sound verbose, but have zero substance. And so I think this actually doesn't sound as verbose, or it's very articulate. It's dumbed down to a more, I don't know, conceivable level, but it's even more intelligent than those who try to be pretend.
Absolutely,
So,
because he's
yeah.
making it digestible, and he's making it to a point where, I mean, he is talking about like these really high concept ideas. I mean,
Yes.
I know I keep going back to like Alec Holland's ego death,
Yeah.
when he's embracing,
Yeah.
kind of who he is and where he is in the world, and he's not going through these grandiose inner monologues. They're just kind of little thought bubbles here, but what you're getting.
Yeah.
And like you said, you don't feel like you're being preached to. He's not talking down to you, and that is a skill that is just, I mean, it's a masterclass.
Less is more. It's less is more.
Yeah,
It-
but I'm saying he's tackling these huge concepts.
oh
And
yeah.
it's insane.
And what I like about it too is when he does do that, when you figure out what he's talking about, it's very satisfying, and you even feel like you're smarter. You're like, oh, I get it. Like
Well,
the idea
you guys-
is not something stupid at the end. It actually,
Right.
is
I mean,
big.
it does help that he's like holding his metaphysical
Yeah.
skull.
Yeah.
And so the visuals, he's letting the artist
Shakespeare.
do work too. So
Yeah.
which is another thing he understands this medium top to bottom, because like if it was anything else, if he wasn't doing that Hamlet pose that is drawn so beautifully, you kind of go like, what the hell is going on here? But there's nothing left to interpretation. You know exactly what he's trying to convey, and it's just brilliant.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Drew.
Okay. Alan had a rule of thumb that he would keep his dialogue to no more than 30 words, generally in a bubble. If there are more than 30, there's a problem. And when it came to the art, the character designs, the story, he had a free flowing process with Steve and John. They were always exchanging letters with each other, because we got to remember, back in the day, phone calls were pretty damn expensive.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah, they were.
Yeah, so they were always exchanging letters and postcards to each other, with free flowing with ideas. And when he would send them the scripts, they would draw them up, send them into DC. But one or two occasions, they got to go to England to visit Alan. They discovered that he was actually sketching up, drawing the pages himself. He was drawing everything himself, how he visualized it. And they were like, "Why didn't you show us these? Why didn't you tell us these?" He's like, "I didn't want to box you guys in. I wanted you guys to express yourselves. I wanted you guys to be able to see what you guys could do."
Which I know we keep talking about Grant Morrison. He is 100% the opposite. He'll do script and he will draw pages and like, I want you to recreate this, but with the touch of your flair. But it's like, it's great. Like, he'll have reflections and water and everything. I do kind of want to start moving into this issue, the anatomy lesson. And I'll jump to Jim first, because he kind of referenced this. But you know, Jim, you picked up the book, you read the first issue, you're like, yeah, I don't get it. And you come into this. And this issue just completely throws everything that we've known, because Swamp Thing had been around for, I think, roughly a decade, maybe a little less. So you've had almost 10 years worth of stories of Swamp Thing leading up to this. And this entire time, there's this belief that Alec Holland is Swamp Thing. Part of his big drive here is to get back to that humanity that he lost when he got transformed into the Swamp Thing. And then you have this issue that comes in, and two things here. One, this entire issue is told from Jason Woodrow's perspective, and it's essentially an autopsy. And if we got that today, I would cringe, because you would have someone that has no understanding of people or how people in these positions speak or talk, trying to do this. But we get this huge just flip on the head of, Alec Holland is dead. He has been dead. He no longer exists. And this is a clump of plants that absorbed the mental capacity of Alec Holland and believes that's who it is, which was just like, what in the world is going on? So, Jim, I want to hear you
not to mention, in previous issues, there was a run, and Len Wein answered this in in letters to the fans. He was like, you guys just have to pretend this didn't happen. Alec Holland visited his brother, and his brother made him a potion that would turn him back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a huge retcon.
Yeah, it was a big deal. But Jim, so you read the second issue, and I'm assuming you're like, you know what, I'll keep reading now.
No, so I think I'll keep going with this. But the thing that got me too is I read this around 2013. That's when I kind of got into reading comics, 2012, 2013. So when I read it, I kind of had heard about it. It wasn't just fresh off the deal. So actually, one of the things that I thought first off was like how much balls that you have to actually do this. And then even wondering at that point, would people be able to do this now if they wanted to do something that much of a retcon? But it did blow my mind again, because Jason Woodrow doing most of the narration and going through, almost being the hero in the issue a bit. And it's such a weird play of how that goes, knowing who he was, knowing, some other things. So it was a weird play of going into it, knowing some stuff, not knowing some other stuff and things like that. And not really, I'll admit, not really caring at that point much about Swamp Thing, just because I hadn't had much of a exposure to him, except the movie back in the day. And so it just really ended up feeling like how smart it was and how crazy it was to do what Alan Moore did. And it just impressed me. And if this would have been, say, the 5th issue down the line, I may not have actually even gotten to it. I'll admit it, because I ended up like really thrown off by that first issue and read this, and this issue is enough to be like, okay, whatever he's written in this, I'll just keep going because it is so well done. The pacing, again, like a horror story, but still able to just get you because of the tension and how it's gripping and that going forward. And then again, the art is so good and plays it up so much with the atmosphere. And that's what I think the first time I read it, it was more even the atmosphere, more so than the individual deal, but overall that whole play of him playing that okay, Alec, and really explaining it. It wasn't like all of a sudden that whole thing came at me and I'm like, that doesn't make any damn sense. Like, what are you talking about? It goes through the process of explaining everything going down, and it really does make sense. And it just throws everything, on its ear. It actually makes it more interesting even. Now there's a reason to keep going because of this. And even thinking back and having that one retconned issue, that's kind of funny, but it does end up making the character so much different and fresh and going forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're talking about how he came in and just kind of hit it right out of the gates. It's almost like, these writers back then had to come in and do well with their books. Otherwise, the book may not keep going. It's not like today where, oh, hey, Vita Ayala, we're going to bring you on this book. It's an ongoing, but we'll see if it's an ongoing. But don't worry.
Not just that. This is one of the lowest selling books at DC, and they had their backs against the wall. And they were, so Steve has even said that they were constantly trying to impress the higher ups with their art. They admitted it. They were always trying to impress them with their detail and everything.
And we said without the art, and we said before, like the art, without the art this good, the concepts are so high in some of these things that I don't think it would work.
It could
I
be
think that
really,
people,
really flat. I think it would. And it's not taking away from Moore's writing. It's just that I don't think you could have some of those short sentences like when Swamp Thing, dies, or when he's regenerating and things like that, or when he's essentially he has the ego death and is starting to realize that who he thought he was has been dead for a very long time. Like I don't think it could work with this very clinical, clean line, because a lot of this artwork is when you're in the swamp, it's an idealized psychedelic earth mother spiritual vibe. And the more that Swamp Thing goes along, especially after the rebirth of Swamp Thing, the more, Christ, how many strokes of a pencil go into some of those full page pictures of Swamp Thing?
Yeah.
Like
not thousands, man.
They're meeting deadlines. They're constantly meeting those hard edge deadlines and barely living off government sustenance to get by, which is insane. No, that's true. As Stevens even said, they were living off government cheese and everything to get by making this book.
I remember government cheese.
Can I ask you guys, and this is maybe it's still on topic, but because Josh, you were asking how did Jim start at issue 1 of this run, and then how was he able to move to issue 2, and how did he feel about the retcon and everything? Do you guys like the retcon? Because I think about something like Silver Surfer, right? Silver Surfer, when Jack Kirby had created him, he wanted Silver Surfer to be this alien being who came to Earth and was learning how to become human because of the Fantastic Four, and the issues were going to be about the humanity of people on Earth and the morality tales of that. But then Stan Lee said, no, I want to give him a character. I want to give him a wife. I want him to sacrifice himself to Galactus to be the Herald, and gave him that whole new backstory. And then that's what went forward. But Jack Kirby was pretty upset about that because that wasn't his origin. That wasn't who he created him to be. So for a lot of people, they were like, oh, well, I like this Silver Surfer better. Do you think people like this version of Swamp Thing more than the original Len Wein creation?
I think so.
Yeah,
I would say
I would have to, because it brings in so many concepts. Like the green, all these other things that weren't there before. It takes him from being like a run-of-the-mill monster story to something that really we haven't seen before, because you know, in certain ways he still is Alec Holland. You know what I mean? It's his. He still has that spirit of him, so to speak, but it's the inner turmoil and battling with the fact that, you know, I can't go back to what I was. I'm something completely different now. I mean, that's a wonderful thing to do. And another reason that that's a little different as well is Len Wein loved it too. Like, I mean, this was universally like mind blowing. Everybody praised this. You could argue, and I personally, I do like all the Zenla stuff for Silver Surfer.
Me too.
I think that if they ran with it, the way that Jack Kirby wanted to do it, that would have been fine too, because Silver Surfer is just a sweet character. But I mean, there's no way no matter what they picked, the depth wouldn't match this. You know, you're battling. Never mind. I'm sorry.
I'll say, look, the Swamp Thing, for me, it's like you can. Sometimes you want your very. I compare it to films. Sometimes you want your very heady type film, your Warner Herzog type film, where you're like, "What the fuck did I just read or watch?" and then sometimes you want your basic, Michael Bay, everything explodes type film, type movie. And I compare that for Swamp Thing, the first arc with Bernie Wrightson on the art. It's like that. That's fun to read, because Bernie Wrightson, you cannot discount his art on that first arc. It is so fucking beautiful, and it's a shame that he didn't have part in this run with Alan Moore. But they're both fun in their own rights. I think it all depends on where you are in your state of mind.
I do think it's hard, and again, with the benefit of hindsight, to not has someone who does like Neil Gaiman and who does like the Sandman, the original run, to not overlay the Sandman and the character of Dream and Death and all of the now I'm having stream brain, all of the infinite, the deities, the godlike personalities within that, and then not put Swamp Thing in with them. Maybe that's my headcanon, but it's really, I don't know if Gaiman necessarily stole, but I do think that it's hard not to see what Alan Moore did with this Swamp Thing run, and even later on in the other volumes, that what he might have carried into his own the Sandman.
Well, you can't forget that Neil learned from Alan, and Neil Alan took him under his wing, and he taught him pretty much how comic books work.
Yeah, and what's his name? And again, my Terry Pratchett as well. Some of the more absurd stuff with Discworld, but it's just interesting it's wild though, because I did take this a lot more serious on a reread than I do when I reread Neil Gaiman in sort of the fanciful, Dream, even when Dream is really screwed, like when he's trapped in hell because Lucifer tricked him into taking ownership of hell. Good story, but it's like, I don't know, this book felt so much more dark horror, but not like I don't know, more psychological terror than anything else.
Well, I think that psychological terror comes in partially with this retcon, because you're taking Swamp Thing and he's no longer just a man that's become a monster. It's kind of what Sammy said. He's become so much more than that. This concept of identity and what makes you who you are and why are you who you are is fully ingrained here without ever preaching it. Like, there's nothing here. It's just it's in the story based on what happens, because you've got Alec Holland, dying, he's frozen. You've got Woodrow doing this autopsy on him, discovering it. I love the whole kind of power play of Woodrow's like kind of the hero but not the hero. You can tell there's an evilness to him, and then you have this rich schmuck who's just a bastard. But when Swamp Thing comes back and he sees the notes and he learns that he never was Alec, he was just plants and these things, and these kind of ate these ideas almost to make him sentient, I guess, to who he is. The the thing that I remember seeing that did this really well, this kind of same concept that's more recent, was the remake of Battlestar Galactica. And when you had the Cylons that didn't know they were the Cylons discovering it, and they start questioning everything about who they are. This is kind of what you get here, right? And it doesn't like deep dive or kind of lay it out, but that's what he's going through. And I loved the kind of just monologue of Woodrow kind of saying like, you know, he's never, like, Swamp Thing's never been known to be outright like overly violent or to kill, but who knows, once he learns. And then you're seeing him, and then you've got this kind of last panel that all that matters is just the dying. And it's talking about the guy he's killing, but it's also talking about the idea of Alec Holland. That is death now. It doesn't matter. It's gone. So inherently that changes so much of what this story does and can do moving forward.
May I ask the panel, because I like I said, I know nothing about Swamp Thing. I'm not as much not a DC guy as much as I am a Marvel guy. Is Swamp Thing a good guy or a bad guy? And I hate to break it down as simplistic as that, you know, but is he like a Punisher, like anti-hero, right? Like
he's more of a force of nature, if anything. He's a representative of the green.
Okay.
And so he doesn't and he will do, no matter a good I guess a good idea would be someone like Black Panther or Black Adam, where his allegiances will go like, you know, where I have to protect Wakanda, or I have to protect, what is it, Kandar, or what is Black Adam City?
Yeah.
Kandahar.
So his allegiance is to the green, and he is the representative of that. So if you're in conflict with that, you're in conflict with Swamp Thing. Okay. So you've actually had heroes go toe to toe with him, villains go toe to toe with him. He's beyond that. He doesn't really care about the petty squabbles of the human world.
Man, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we'll jump to this, because this, you know, Jason Woodrow becoming Pharaonic Man, that's when you really see this, the two issues kind of after the anatomy lesson really kind of explore the idea of the green and kind of what it goes through, because that's what you have Swamp Thing. Like Swamp Thing, he has completely given up earthly ties, and he's just becoming one with the green. That's when he plants his roots, and he's got the, you know, the puddles, the stream coming out of his mouth and everything. So you get to kind of experience it of him discovering it. But this page in particular with Jason, like as he becomes one with the green as well, and he's like feeling everything on the earth, you know, he's sensing everything, and it's talking about how he can sense the redwoods, and he's just going to like the plant that's just bursting life in Antarctica, like he's feeling everything. So that's that idea and concept of the green. Like it I love the way you said it. It's a force of nature, and what he gave up is what, you know, Jason keeps referring to as steak or meat, and that's the red. It's this whole other thing that if and when we get to Animal Man will explore the red, and that's living beings. But I'll even say recently, you know, for my top books of 2024, I put Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, Feral Trees, because this is the whole character beat between Swamp Thing and Poison Ivy. Is Ivy's like, I don't understand, and he's like, you're too caught up in this petty world, and he uses the word petty because as human beings, that's kind of what we are. Salty, I know you were going to say something, so I apologize.
Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in context to your question about is Swamp Thing good or bad, the panel's answered the question, but it's fascinating because then you see John Constantine come in and have this long history with Swamp Thing later on, you know, and John Constantine is all about the occult, but, you know, Swamp Thing, you know, was being blamed because he murdered these executives who were polluting nature. And it's like Swamp Thing's got his own thing, and it to me, it really transcends like shit like, oh, they're good guys or they're bad guys. It's just like, no, you're murdering what it is that I am elementally and spiritually bound to, you know, and I'm going to kill you because of course I am, because I can't, you know. Now, is that good or that bad, or is it like literally just like, I don't know, pissing in the face of a god? What do you expect to happen? You know, I mean, it's just I don't know.
And yeah, no, and I appreciate you guys breaking it down that way, because you know, I think I didn't mean to, I guess, break it down and like, but well, actually, no, I'm a crayon eater, so I do look at things. It's like, is he a good bad guy or a bad guy? You know. And also, I love Lord of the Rings, which is very black and white. You know, you have good versus evil.
Yeah.
And so, I was just wondering what y'all's take on this was.
Okay,
and-
well,
and where you
even
see
better.
it.
So he's kind of like Tom Bombadil who kills people.
Yeah,
Sweet. I
and
love
he
it.
and he roots for
That's awesome.
LSU.
Yeah.
And he likes Benya.
Oh, wow. All
Pretty
right.
much.
Wait,
Another thing that we didn't mention real quick, and I wanted to get this in. One salty to your, you said this before. I do like that Woodrow. He calls the exec a reptile, and that harkens back to what you were saying. And another thing that I will probably get to it at the end, but something that I really appreciated about all of this, start to finish, even though Arcane is only kind of mentioned in passing, he's still very prevalent throughout all of this, even though you haven't seen him or you've only seen him in visions, and like he's still very sinister and in the background. That's something that I really enjoyed.
It leads to a very twisted and fucked up storyline involving him in the next volume.
Yes. Max, I kind of want to go back to your question too, though, because I agree with Salty. There's not really a definitive answer. I think we look at good and bad based on our heroes, and this is kind of what Salty was talking about at the very, very beginning. Our heroes feel out of place because they are out of place. We have a world, and we view good and bad based on our heroes and what's good for humanity, and that's not. That's not Swamp Thing's mission. That's not the Green's mission. Like, our heroes are fighting for humanity. He's fighting for the Green. And sometimes those align, sometimes those don't. But you could still say he's a good guy when you compare to, the whole Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. Swamp Thing's got that great responsibility. Then you see Jason Woodrow, that the moment he gets it, he uses it to abuse it. And this issue is great because this isn't the introduction of Jason Woodrow. He first appeared in the Atom. Like, he's been around. The Justice League they've dealt with him, and he was always kind of a joke, a chump. And he shows up here, and it's like, oh shit, he's this threat.
They changed his character quite a bit throughout the years too. Like, wasn't he like an extra dimensional like plant imp?
He
was.
They kind of like didn't blatantly change it, but they didn't really reference it. They're like, yeah, he's this plant guy,
they were just kind of like,
skin spray.
I do like that in this Justice League kind of goofs on him. They're just like, Woodrow.
He loses.
That loser. He loses.
Yeah.
Jim, exactly. He loses.
Yeah, no, Superman's like, I don't know, Arkham.
So a little fun fact. A little fun fact about the superhero stuff. Stephen Bissette, he is on the record. He effing hates superheroes. He hates them with a passion. He hates them all.
Wow.
So whenever it came to him having to draw superheroes, he would be on the phone with John Totleben. They both lived in Vermont, and he'd be telling, God, fuck this goddamn script. I fucking hate superheroes. I don't want to fucking do this. And John would be like, okay, hey, calm down. I'll come over. I'll help you with the pages. So John would help him pencil the pages because Stephen would refuse to almost do those pages. So whenever you see a superhero,
you can kind of
Stephen
see a little bit of that.
You can see like their tiny little caricatures. Yeah.
In one of his drawings of Firestorm, I think a little bit of that disdain comes out.
Just a little,
just a teeny tiny bit.
I mean,
but actually,
silhouette dropping, and it's like, Jesus, it's like, okay, that's Superman, that's Batman, and it's like, this guy, it all makes sense now. The fact that he really hates superheroes.
Here, Max, I have a good way to describe, and I want to jump off of what Josh said. Here, can a plant have morality?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you would come about it from like.
No, but if a fly lands in a Venus flytrap, did it do it out of malice, or did it just does it? It just does it because that's what it does. That's kind of how Swamp Thing is, really. Honestly.
No, I like that a lot. I think that's really cool. And now, like you guys were mentioning, if this were in fact Alec. If it were in fact Alec, we wouldn't be having these conversations, right? It would just be a dude. It would just be a guy. And so now we're having these philosophical conversations and psychological conversations about what is good and evil, and who does he fight for, and what does that mean in terms of identity, and like, and it's just one simple retcon that really changed, from what it sounds like, the pathway of this entire character's trajectory from that point on.
Yeah, he became instead of being like a character like the Hulk or anything where he's just trying to,
a monster,
come back. Now you're getting these grand things, and the best part about all of this in Alan Moore's writing is he's not asking you these questions to put them in your head. He's just continuing with the story and letting the readers come to these questions on their own, and that is something that is sorely lacking in modern comics.
100%. No one is explaining, hey, this is the time to have this question about the morality of this animate possessed plant thing, and here's the study guide, and here's the Marxist critical race theory version of how this is applicable in I'm not even, how this is applicable in queer studies in 2024. It's just like, no, you got to be smart to get that extra level out of this book. And I love shit like that. I just
a little extra level on the book, real quick. Little extra thing. Alan Moore, when he had started visiting and talking to Stephen and John, how he wrote Abby Arcane in this was how he saw John and Steve living their lives. Living at a motel, cut off jeans and shirts, living paycheck to paycheck. That's how he saw John and Steve, and that was pretty much him expressing his respect for them through Abby.
Wow.
See, I would have never known that. So that's awesome.
I would have never known that.
Salty, I was going to tell you that you're wrong, because clearly this transformation is a trans allegory. And
he's transcoded.
Transcoded.
One thing that I wanted to bring to your guys' attention, do you think, because obviously Woodrow loses his mind here, and in iteration he is a man who becomes a plant, and now with the retcon, Swamp Thing is a plant who's trying to hold on to the idea of a man, and it was like, so he can never, the reason that the green is tainted is simply because you can't be a man, you can't be human to tap into that. So it kind of makes sense that he loses his mind and he bastardizes it in this way that he does moving forward, because, and Swamp Thing even calls him out on it, going like, that's a very human thing to do.
Yes.
Well, do you guys think that that is kind of the allegory, the allegorical nature of almost anything that we see with humankind? Because you even look at something, at least for me, I'm a man of faith, and for my view of religion, my view of like who I put my faith in, my Savior, Christ, like, at his core teachings, I think, are very good things, but we've seen the horror that man can do with religion. We've seen the horrors that the church can become in the wrong hands. So do you think it's not just for nature, but it's just like what mankind can do with anything?
We suck. We ruin everything.
No, well, I mean, the better angels of our nature, I mean, what is it that allows, I don't know. It's hard not to go back to Tolkien in some of these things, and his not even allegory, but throughout, the book is, how can you pick up power and have the wisdom to know when to put that power down? When does the power that you have become corrupted? And it's interesting because with the wood, with Woodrue, the whole thing was about revenge and inflicting pain and control, and I'm going to punish, and I'm going to murder, and I'm going to destroy, and it's beautiful because he's doing all these things, and then you've got Swamp Thing saying, don't you get it? Once you get rid of all the animal life that actually expels CO2, what are the plants supposed to eat? You're gonna murder everything because you hate the meat, and it's like, it's just, I don't know. I thought that was just brilliant. It's just, it's simple, but it's not. It's not at all. I
don't know why
being a tryhard, bro.
Yeah. When I first
Okay,
read
you're
it,
not
it
a
was
plant, bro. You can't say that word.
yeah.
That's our
I'm gonna
word.
go to Jim real quick because I do want to touch on this. Part of the juxtaposition of you have the Justice League here trying to find a physical way to stop this,
Yeah.
whereas Swamp Thing's
Yeah.
thing is like, no, I'm gonna come at you with a reason. So, Jim, is
Yeah.
that what you're about to kind of jump on? Or
Yeah, I was also going to say when I first read it, the thing that I got too from it was the idea of like, I like music and stuff like that. And it reminded me a lot of like an artistic person who just does their thing and then somebody trying to force their way into something, like forcing their way into like, hey, I'm a genius. Look at me. I'm going to
Yeah.
do that. It seemed like that's how Woodrue was kind of going at it, almost like we made a joke of that could be Tom King forcing something.
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm going to, but does it the wrong way, does
Yeah.
it in a way that isn't that natural type of way and the way that
Yeah.
but the thing that I liked about the what's that song?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it's funny because everything that you're saying is another level that I hadn't even thought of.
Yeah,
Because you're
that one.
talking, I mean, you're talking about soul and I mean, it's another part of humanity. And I'm, not necessarily soul in, the Catholic or Christian way, but soul in a Christian way nonetheless. But it's just like you have to be into something and truly into something and invested into something to care about something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're wearing the skin suit of whatever it may be. And that's what Woodrow was doing. Was I'm going to take this identity of something because it gives me power and I can wield that power over others. And it's like, guys, where the fuck have we seen that for like the last 10 years? We're going to come into what it is that you love because we have the power. We stole something and we're pretending to do it, and you have to listen to us because you have to, or you're something else. It's just, I don't know. I just, maybe that's
maybe that's how from the even back when I first read it, it's just the idea of that the person who comes into something and wants it, they're always loud, they're always yelling that they're the one and this is the way to go, and it always ended up feeling, it always felt like it felt like the play though of when somebody is doing something for the love of it, they're not going to sit there and yell and scream about it. They're just doing their thing. But the thing about the Justice League, though, I do like the idea, too, is that they're up in the watchtower just looking down on everybody. And it's very much a symbol of like, oh, look at them down there on Earth.
Yeah, it's very elitist.
Yeah, and very much like, oh, he's a joke. And they're not even there to see what's going on. They don't even realize that he has evolved in this way because they're not even really involved. And the idea of them going like, well, we could change, like Firestorm. Well, I might be able to do that. They're just, they're doing comic booky things. Yep. While you have on Earth where it's going down, it's more of the green, like you said, a spiritual type thing and reason in a different way, not just like, oh, look at us, we're superheroes. This is what we're able to do all the time. And it kind of does change that and kind of shows that this book is a book that isn't going to be, okay, Superman's going to come and stop.
Yeah, it's Earth magic. It's Earth magic. And this is shit that's beyond like, again, the Flash or Batman. You can't think or run your way through this stuff. This is metaphysical just as much as it is, geophysical to get clever. You know,
and I like the idea because some stories you read, and it happens in every comic where something's going on in Gotham, and you're like, well, where the hell's Superman? He could just come and do this. But in this, when they do that, it shows you that they're there and really can't do anything about it. Like they don't even understand what's going on. That's how off base they are and out of touch. And it makes sense what Drew was saying about the idea that they didn't like superheroes, and this shows it. This is kind of like the way of like, look how
they have no business here.
If things really happen, they can't just snap a finger and things get done. And they seem like that's their problem. They're up there like, well, we'll just go down there whenever we have to go down. Well, he's a joke and all that, but he's not. And we see he's not. People are dying, and they're just kind of up there. And a ton of people are dying.
Yeah,
and dying horrifically. This,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
and not even just dying. Like I mean, like the over oxygenation. Like
Yeah.
paranoid. There was like it's a
Sure.
terrible way to die.
Mhm.
Tortured, burned alive. I mean, this is
Mm.
I mean,
premeditated.
yeah. At one point, they even like almost suggest, like, Aquaman, can you talk to fish about this? Like, what's going
Yeah.
on in the sea? And
Yeah, Green Lantern. Can you
Algae.
talk to any of your like plant bros? And he's like, yeah, but they're like,
yeah.
I did
What?
love the logic on that. He was like, well, they're alien plants.
Yeah,
They're
they're
going
not
to have the
really
same problem. I was like, that's a thing.
Yeah. Then they're gonna get
Oh.
Raven. There's weird, like they don't have
Yeah.
any
The
clue.
Raven. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a glow up though, because they're all going like, he's a joke. Because like, you know, in the other couple issues that Floronic Man was in, like he'd wrap vines around you and be like, and then you're like, and then Adam would just be like, well, I'll make myself small, and he's like, oh, I don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
And then it was like now all of a sudden he can change the entire ecosystem. You know, I mean that's a glow up. Really, it's
even down to like his internal monologue just sounds like someone so much more malicious and sinister.
It
But,
is, and it's also too, and like we all talked about this, and it was like Swamp Thing just has to go in and be like, nobody likes to try hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Nobody likes you.
And
no,
he
nobody
is
likes-
completely insane. I mean, he's way
Yeah.
over in the same, but they don't make it like at the end, well, oh my God, he should be, handled with care. He's killing people. So you take him down. So you'd have to do that.
Two things just super quick. The first one I like. I really like what you guys are saying about Woodrow and Woodrow, because it's like you guys have already mentioned. It's like this Tom King syndrome where you have someone who thinks that what they're doing is actually going to be the best way because they think that they're the most intelligent. But in all matter of fact and reality is that not only are they wrong, but they're actually hurting. They're actually doing a net negative.
Yep.
Yes,
And it's like, Tom King thinks he's writing the best damn Wonder Woman book that's ever been done because he's like so high and mighty, but he's actually hurting the character more than anyone else ever has in the history of her arcs. And so I like that, what you guys mentioned there. But two, I'm looking at this panel to my right, and I'm looking at the detail of the algae and the dripping and like the pustules and the moss and the roots, and I'm just like, how do you even start that page? Like, how do you like, where do you start, and then how do you decide where you want to end? I mean, like, I'm just fascinated by how they do.
That's a question for Steve. That's a good question for Steve to figure out how he saw it.
Because like when you have someone like Superman or Batman, the most you can really elaborate on is like musculature, anatomy, like how do I want to change their anatomy? How big or smaller? But for the most part, you got to stick with the symbol, you got to stick with the suit. But like with Swamp Thing, who knows? Like, where do you start and end?
He's a melting ice cream sandwich. I mean, so you can't fuck him up. You know what I mean?
But it's awesome. I love how just like chaotic but beautiful and like weirdly, grotesque it is. Like, it's so cool. So
yeah, I mean, look at that panel of him just staring straight forward. It was like you can understand his motivation.
That's what it
like
is.
you know what it was like. He was like, I have to go be based plant Chad right here.
Be daddy,
like
Chad.
Because what does he say? What does he say in this? He's like, this ends, or it's
over.
Yes.
Yeah, he does the same one.
Yeah.
and then he's like, look at my planty cake. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I was gonna say, to be fair, like if I were Floronic Man having my brat summer or whatever we want to call it here, and then Swamp Thing showed up, he wouldn't even have to say this ends now. If I had that face staring at me just like that, I'd be like, yes sir, I'm sorry, I'll fix it.
Yeah, I know.
No words necessary.
Got a little carried away.
Yeah,
I love the combo though of Woodrow just goes nuts and he's yapping and he's yelling and this and that, and then you go to a panel where Swamp Thing's just staring at him like, you're an asshole. And then
and there's that great panel of him when he's in the water, and he's got his arms up, and he looks like someone who's totally liberated by their own indoctrination into something that he can't fully understand because he isn't a plant. Even though even though he wants to be, he will never be a plant. So at least in this iteration, you know, he is mutated as such. Swamp Thing is a plant. So so no matter what he tries to do, no matter if he tries to ingest parts of Swamp Thing or, you know, like do all these, it doesn't matter because like he will always inherently taint the Force because he's not pure. It's like this huge idea of it was like you're trying to be something you're not, and it never ever works.
And there's so many different examples of that in real life, like the idea.
Yes, there are.
Happens like if you're an Irish guy in the mob, you're never going to be, you know, the higher levels. It just ends up and you get pissed off, but it doesn't matter. You're just not gonna be it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, what have we had to put up as far as you know, a stated agenda that just got blocked? Thank God for children today. Everything that you were saying with that, I mean, we can see these archetypes in this Alan Moore book, and it doesn't matter that it's a gender ideology. It is the same fucking outcome. You become power mad because you're trying to assume the identity of something you're not, and you have to destroy anything that is that actual thing that you can never be. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's religion, it's political ideology, it's gender ideology.
What it is.
Any you know, it's like what I always say about politics. It was like, you know, there's a spectrum, right? And if you go too far left or too far right, you become insufferable and you become dangerous. You know, it's because you can't have, there has to be some wiggle room. You have to be able to bend. You have to be able to have, and you have to be able to, you know, and this is a perfect example where plants are going to take over. And he's like, no, because you have to have room to have a conversation because like it or not, one can't exist without the other. So you know, when you become zealotous like this, it is dangerous. And you know, we see that. And then Swamp Thing's like, dude, just I'm plant Chad Gigaboss, like just relax, like, you know, like a plant. You know, like when someone says like, hey, I'm gonna make like a tree and leave, and like, no, I'm gonna make like a tree and stay exactly where I am for hundreds of years, you know, like
give a hoot, don't pollute.
He does say to Woodrow, he's like, you are just a man, or you are just a piece of red meat stuck in this, like, you know, facade or whatever. He's like, you're the one that's wrong because because Woodrow thinks that his actions are just because he's like, I am the green. The green told me this. I'm doing this for the green. And he's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. This is your own humanistic. This is your own personal vendetta that you have. And that was one thing that I was wondering as I was reading the issue for the first time. And he starts going on this like huge, like, I mean, he closes everyone in their homes and takes away the oxygen and makes the kid film it. And I was like, what is his motivation right now? Like, I didn't know why he was doing all these things. And then it finally comes to fruition. But it was kind of interesting to hear Swamp Thing tell him, you are not, in fact, the green. You are a man parading around as the green, thinking that what you're doing is, in fact, just. So, yeah, no, I think that was a good way of kind of finding his, you know, the villain's, you know, motivation there. So
agreed. I am going to stop us real quick before we transition into the last three issues. Salty has to bounce. He's got to go make the din-dins. But Salty, before you go, one, I want to say thank you for coming. I really appreciated the insight you brought tonight. And let people know if they want to find you, where can they find you? What type of stuff do you cover? Just give us a rundown.
I really don't. I like to come onto live streams now. I've been working on some big stuff. I'll get to it eventually. But no, I'm just, I'm grateful for the invite, and I really enjoyed working with you guys tonight and hearing your perspectives and bringing your expertise to this. This was fantastic. I love talking about good art that has such depth and soul after 10 years of bitching about things that quite frankly should die in a fire, entertainment wise. So, yeah, thanks a lot. I hope you have a good rest of the show. If you cover Swamp Thing too, let me know. I'd love to talk about it with you guys, but have a good evening.
Awesome, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you
Love
again
you,
for
dude.
coming. I appreciate
Take
it.
care.
And
See you later, Max.
even
Great
though
to meet you,
he's
man.
not really doing much right now, I've got his link in the description. So go check out some of his past videos.
He's doing the retro stuff. I love those
Yeah.
retro rewinds. Those
Heck
are great.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're not monetized. They're purely vanity projects for people. So
No, I
So
love
worth
it.
it though.
So
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
yeah. All right.
All
Good
right,
night,
brother.
gentlemen.
Night.
Have a
Enjoy
good
your
one.
dinner. Thank you again.
See you, dude.
Yeah. No. So we were talking. So basically, I can't. It's not in this. I know it's in the run somewhere, but doesn't like the Parliament of Trees kind of leave Woodrow on scene where he's like, "I want to be the representation of the green," and they're just kind of like,
Cool, dude.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I believe so. I haven't read the other 5 trades in a while. I'm gonna pick up and read volume 2 before too long, but I start getting things mixed up in timelines. Just years worth of reading so many comics, so they all kind of blur together after like a decade. Other than just kind of commenting one last time on this art, I do love the art. I picked this panel in particular, one because it's badass, but 2, I love these splashes of red because this is the first time you've seen the splashes of red like this. Everything else have been softer tones like blues, purples, even some pinks. So you get that intensity here, which worked for the intensity of this moment. And I also loved where you were talking, Max, about the when they had the kid recording him and then the television footage and the change in the art style for that, I thought was really good. But I do want to move on to the back 3 issues, because you had your first issue that kind of closes up the loose ends. Then you have 3 issues for this kind of Floronic Man story, and then we move into the second half of this trade, which is the next story, and it involves Etrigan the Demon coming in, and a lot of just like mystical, paranormal, I guess. I don't want to say paranormal, that almost sounds alien. But just I guess demonic in some ways, like not in a like praise Satan type way, but occult, I guess, is probably better, that really comes in, and it shows you, and I'll say up front, I didn't enjoy this story as much. However, I love that it kind of stepped a foot in another direction to say, hey, if you think this is all we're doing, you're wrong. We have this whole field that we can play with, and introduces so many of these elements. So
well, and Etrigan fits so much better into this than the Justice League does. I mean,
100%. Jim, I don't know if you want to jump on this story and kind of jump in with kind of your general thoughts.
Yeah, it actually threw me off at first, when you end up having Jason Blood. But when Jason Blood actually, starts by coming in, it's really like, holy crap, like what's going on? And then when I realized, oh my God, it feels like you said, it feels more in the story than the Justice League, like you just said. I liked it. It ends up giving more of that dark feel, like what we'll get, continuing on, and kind of gives Etrigan, who kind of is, there might be some Etrigan fans out there, but he is kind of goofy at points. But this really laid on the horror part of him. He's not rhyming and stealing like he does a lot of time, and and so you end up
he rhymes a little bit, but
Blood,
it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes people go a little bit over the top with it. It ends up being a little goofy. But
I did want to ask, what iteration is this? Because is this where Jason Blood was the knight and he got paired up with him, or is this kind of like how the so there's like 3 iterations of Etrigan. Like one was kind of like he was a knight of King Arthur's court, and he got paired with the demon, and then there's also he's the demon, but this is his human form. He has to revert to like a human form. So one's kind of like how Thor was originally in the comics with the cane and the doctor. I forget his name.
Donald Blake.
Donald Blake, thank you. And then like another one is kind of like it's almost like a Hulkish thing. Well, he'll revert back to his human form because it's like it's very weird pre and post crisis. And depending on which one you get, the character of Jason Blood is a little bit different. I can't remember which one this is.
I honestly do not know either. Like I'm just gonna
I
be honest.
believe that this was that he was like a high priest. I'm looking actually right now just to make sure. I think it is part of the Merlin stuff and the part of the whole night deal. But it was one of those where, if I remember right, even that he didn't really realize it. Then he went under meditation. He ended up realizing some things that kind of played out. But that was them kind of adding things on.
Well, see, that's why I'm really interested in finishing this run. I was telling Josh, like this starts pre-Crisis of Infinite Earths and finishes post-Crisis. So I'm interested to see how that adds the changes the trajectory of this of this, so to speak, because I really don't remember.
Yeah, because I think that switch over. Go ahead, Drew.
Sorry. This story about Etrigan, the demon, and the spirit that's the demon that's brought up from the Ouija board. This was pitched by Stephen and John. So they were on the book prior to Alan coming on board. They were working with Marty, the original writer. They pitched this story to Marty and about doing this. But Marty got kicked off, and Alan picked it up, and their pitch became the story here.
Nice. It's really interesting stuff. I loved kind of Jason Blood in this because I loved the whole thing with him seeing people and just talking with them and kind of throwing out a premonition of, you're going to die at this time because a swordfish is going to impale you. And people are like, the fuck are you talking about?
And that was so funny. And one of the things before you go, Jeff, one of the things I did like about Jason Blood is a lot of times now you get Jason Blood and it's like, he's kind of sad sack. Everybody feels bad, and this one ends up not having that full out, like black and white Jason Blood Etrigan. It was kind of, not sinister, but him just walking around like, yep, you're going to get impaled by a sword. Just walks on. He's like, that's just it. Hey, she's not going to like that lawn furniture and goes. It was pretty cool. It was actually threw me off a bit.
I like that scene where he's walking down the street and there's that priest taking donations and he puts $13 up and he laughs for like a minute.
Yeah, so you don't really get that play anymore, really. When it's Jason Blood, it's like he's everybody's buddy and he's doing this and that, and then Etrigan comes out rhyming like a moron. But this one actually felt like it had some weight to it and actually felt like, oh, which one's the worst? Like, do you want Etrigan or Jason? I kind of like that. I like that a lot, actually. And this makes it more of a serious character. Like,
it's better. It's way better.
Yeah, it's way better. I think so, too.
And this whole story almost has like a Constantine Hellblazer type vibe of you've got this demonic spirit that has come through because of, two people using a Ouija board. And then it's this Monkey King, which is a demon that eats on people's fears. Like that to me, it's been done. Like there are so many stories where that same thing as concept has been done, but I like the way they did it. And then way ahead of its time, the fact that you have an autistic child that's kind of the center point of this. Like it wasn't preachy. It wasn't trying to be like, oh, autism. We have to like. It was just like,
it wasn't on either side. He just had it, and it ended up being something where almost like that was thrown in a bit so that you get like nobody believed him, and he's saying these things happen, but they end up like let's shut, but never was preachy in any of the way, which I thought was actually pretty cool. Like, I expected it to all of a sudden be like, oh my God, what are we going to do with this? And it just was, that's the kid.
Because we're so used to it now. I mean, it was like, it was like they have to put that like stigma on it. And like before, now it's, in this, it's like, no,
it's funny.
And it feels more like from the mouths of babes, more than, concentrating on that they're autistic.
And that's the weird thing. If somebody said to me, oh, an autistic, well, did they portray him good, bad, whatever? I'm like, no, he's just autistic. That's it. That's just him. And he's in the, this home deal kind of, there. But even that wasn't preached or anything. It was actually pretty good. Really
Oh,
good, actually.
it,
Yeah.
and it did it well because it kind of presented, at least not from the autistic kid's perspective, both sides, but just from society's perspective, both sides. You have people that are like, this kid's crazy, like he went crazy, he
Well,
killed his parents.
yeah. And,
And
it
then
almost plays up like you're almost scared of the kid when you first meet him. I mean, when he's doing that,
100%.
and it's not saying like you're bad for doing that. He's kind of
Mhm.
scary. He's just, but that's just him. I mean, he's obsessed with the deal. Then when you find out that he's obsessed with the spelling because of what happened to his parents and things like that with the Ouija
yeah.
board, then you're like, holy crap! Like this is
Yeah, that's
crazy.
heavy.
Yeah, it is. It's really heavy. So I
Yeah.
thought it was done really well.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even that scene when Cable is yelling at Allie, and like he's so there's still he still puts in like the prejudice
Mhm.
of the time where he's yelling at her for taking the job working with the kids and saying like they throw up on you, they're they bite you,
Mhm.
they pull your these stigmas are there. It's just they're tackled in such a way where
Yeah.
that's coming out of the mouth of a drunk crazy person, so you kind of take it
And
for
I
what it is.
even like that because the idea where even at a base level, though, it's a guy who's kind of pissed off because his wife is not paying attention to him, and he's kind
Yeah.
of pissed off, and he's like, "Why are you doing this? Why do you care more about them?" And it gets more and more as it goes. But the idea of that, you can actually say, "Okay, the guy's kind of a piece of crap," but I kind of get what he's saying in another level. You know what I mean? You're like,
someone who's been married someone who's been married to
Yeah.
a teacher for 8 years,
exactly.
I can tell you
Somebody's
I've
been
had
married
similar
for over
conversations
30.
with, maybe
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
maybe a little different where
As an aside, maybe it hits me even more because at the moment my wife is volunteering with autistic kids
Oh wow!
at a
I've-
hospital,
Congrats.
and this is the thing in it where you do have a problem. Like I'm not a drunk and yelling like Matt, but you do end up where when this sort of thing goes on, you feel guilty almost like. This is bullshit. Like I want some attention.
Oh,
You're like I
I've-
can't
I've-
say this.
I've told
because-
her plenty of times, like, hey,
Wow.
like when I call you on the way home and let you know I'm on my way home from work, that doesn't mean you have to go through roll call or attendance and
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
me about each.
Well,
and every
this is what happens.
Yeah.
My wife will come home and say, like, "Oh my God, Connor spoke today." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Who the fuck is
Yeah,
Connor?"
just a
I'm
good
like,
and bad, good
like,
day,
what?
bad day.
I'm speaking right
Yeah.
now too. Like it
Yeah.
does get that. Mike actually just does it. My kids are struggling a bit too. They don't want to hear about these kids. And so I get it. And actually, it's done in a really good way, both ways. Up.
Yeah, no, I appreciated it. It was like I said, for different reasons.
Yeah,
But it was but yeah, it felt like a very real conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Afterwards, after reading it, I was trying to do some black magic and get some clothes to form, and maybe I could have some personal touch here. It didn't work.
I will say, especially with these final 3 issues, I think the big takeaway here is kind of what I said earlier. You get this introduction or this stepping into this other world, this occult world, to say like, hey, this is part of this too. Because I mean, with the 2 quote unquote arcs that he's told so far, you've had him put his foot in the superhero world. You had Alan put Swamp Thing's foot in the superhero world. Now you're having him put his foot in the occult and this mystical world, to say like, hey, this is all in one. Like we've got our own world, but these things are still here and ever present. But I think the real kind of takeaways from this story are Matt and Abby. And even though their background and supporting plot, like that's the setup you're getting. You're continuing to see this spiral from these two, especially from Matt. And you see Abby starting to look at Swamp Thing through a different lens. Which is, whenever we get to the second volume, we'll talk about that more.
We're gonna have a lot to talk about on that one.
Who wants to do it with plants? Yeah. But I really kind of liked this whole thing. But and Sammy, you mentioned it earlier, and all of this ever present, you have Arcane, and that's kind of the kind of big thing at the end, and it doesn't it doesn't fully give it away, but we know that this fly that shows up, well, questionable things happen because Matt wrecks his car. He's going to bleed out and die. And then the next time we see him, he's driving. The car's perfectly fine. And he's picking up Abby. And you're like, what the fuck happened? So,
but something I want to point out, and I think is just awesome, is it's bookended.
Yes.
It's one of the first things that Swamp Thing says is he's wandering around going, arcane. And it's one of the last things that we see is that he's coming back. And like, it is just like mind blowing. It was like everything. There's nothing wasted in these. It was even the turmoil between Matt and Abby. It's all going somewhere. Like it's incredible. It really is. And have that much attention to detail.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was about to say. You talk about the bookending of this. And if you go back to that first issue, Loose Ends, the whole time you see Swamp Thing, he's trying to find darkness to hide in. And now at the end of this, you have him just embracing who he is, what he is, and stepping into the light and just, living his life. And then the juxtaposition now is you've got Abby, who's kind of, let's go, Matt, let's give this another go. And they've got the kind of Etrigan's rhyme that was here, but oh crap, it's too small to read. Hold please.
Says been spending most of our lives living in a gangster's paradise.
Been spending most of our lives. Yeah. But this mollified, she goes harsh words forgiven, down nightmares in the dark. Oh shit, now I'm covering up the rest of it. But it's something about demons driving the demons, driven by demons. So you get that cross that I was like, oh, this is good. And it's enough of an ending that it feels complete. Like you get like, okay, I'm good leaving off here, but also enough of like, I want more because I know bad shit's going to happen.
And then of course it's dedicated to Jack Kirby, which is incredible.
Yeah. Cause these guys, they were students of Jack. I mean, Steven, John, Rick, and Tom, they were the first class of the Cooper School. They were the very first students.
Oh wow!
And,
That's cool.
They were all the very first students, and Rick Veitch was actually the one who was actually a published one before all of them. He had some work done that they were kind of looking in awe to, but yeah, so they were all a team together, and they loved Jack. They loved the Fourth World stuff. They loved Etrigan, and yeah, they wanted to put him in this book.
That's actually my next omnibus I'm picking up is Fourth World.
Max,
but can I ask the panel something out of, because we finally gotten to the end. Was there a particular thing that kind of and granted it happens with any run that you read, where there's kind of a moment where it kind of like snaps you out of it, or you go, just for me, mostly the Monkey King stuff. Like even though I didn't care as much and was like, oh, they beat it the same way they beat it in it part 1. That's great. Like, I'm not afraid of you anymore. But even still, this is new at the time. This is early 80s. This is pretty fresh storytelling. This wasn't something like that wasn't beaten to the ground. I will give that a pass. Was there anything that you guys saw where you're like,
No, I would say for me, I mean, really, like you said, when we get to the monkey here, this is where I was just kind of like going back and forth, trying to really understand what was going on. I was like, wait a second. Okay, so they conjured it from the Ouija board, and the kid is, I guess, he's being controlled by the kid. It was just, I was trying to really grasp that. But yeah, other than that, I was for me the monkey story. I was really all in for the what's going on with Arcane and the Fly. The Fly was what made it very interesting.
Oh yeah.
I would say that the way Alan Moore wrote the whole juxtaposition of the Monkey King and the kid, and the fact that he tried to keep suspicion on the kid, is potentially what made this a little, like because I was the same way when I first read this. I was like, okay, so is he or isn't he? And I had moments of that kind of pulled me from the book. Looking back, it doesn't bother me as much. The other thing I remember too is I think it was issue 3 when you first have Swamp Thing going through the green, just kind of embracing it, and it's all that psychedelic stuff, and the weird creatures are talking to him. To me, the first time I read it, that took me out of the book. When I reread it again and knew what was actually going on, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. But I didn't fully care as much. I was just like, all right, yeah, cool. Let's get to the good stuff. So probably those 2 moments. I don't know if Max and Jim, Drew, if y'all have anything. Well, I guess Drew answered, but Max and Jim, I don't know if y'all have anything different.
No, I'm with you.
Because I had one, and I don't think we touched on it.
So throw it out there.
I'll let you go because I'm looking back through this and I'm trying to think if there was a moment that I was pulled out of my reading experience. So
Max was like, issue number 1. Well, I don't know what the fuck is going on. No, I'm kidding.
Honestly, Josh, that was gonna be my first answer. Was like, probably issue 1, but that's an easy answer for me to just go like, yeah. I just didn't, I wasn't engaged yet. But
I mean, I feel like that'd be a pretty typical response. You know what I mean? That's something that I wouldn't blame anybody for having, because you're. What a brilliant way to call it loose ends too. Where I'm going to wrap all this shit up right now.
Yeah.
But no, okay. So it was the moment where Abby and Swamp Thing are talking, and he just came out of the coma and everything, and she's like, kind of like, you good, bro? And she's like, Alec, and he's like, I'm not Alec, and he has this awesome line where Alec Holland is dead. It just took him a long time to lie down. And she's like, well, what are you? And then you almost had like this stereotypical moment where he looks into the camera and goes, I'm Swamp Thing. And it's like, that's the name you fucking picked.
Yeah.
Like, like that was the only thing.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I now that you mention it, I especially the first time reading this, I was like, oh, come on.
I was just kind of like, oh.
But also, it's like, if it were any other writer, I would have been like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I think because it is Alan Moore, and I guess we have higher expectations that I was expecting, because I saw it coming, but then I was expecting more of an Alan Moore type answer there. Like he's going to kind of give this like, I am the oxygen, and like just something like, it's almost something like all being type of thing. And it was like, I am Swamp Thing. And it's like, what the fuck, man? You let me down.
It was their version of an 80s MCU moment where the camera, like you said, the camera zooms in and the music swells, and it's like,
I could totally hear that. But it was like one of those things too, where like that one meme they always use from The Flash. It was like, my methods are beyond your understanding. I am Chris. And you're like, oh, really?
Okay,
Chris is your big bad name, huh? Like, like it's just like it just doesn't feel like in the progression of that story. And I know it's the title of the character or anything. It was like, you can also have a title of a character or someone who was like, John Constantine doesn't call himself Hellblazer, right. Like he could have just like picked some sort of arbitrary name or anything, but it was like, so really it was like you didn't test that out. You didn't see Swamp Thing was that was just you just went right with that, but that was it.
As we go to kind of wrap things up, so we don't go too late, I need to get Jim and Dolan to bed before too long. I do want to, before we go into our final thoughts, I just want to take a moment to kind of touch back on Stephen Bissette and John Totleben's art. I don't know, Drew, if you have anything else you want to add, but before you jump in, I'll just say it's interesting because the first time I picked this book up and looked at the art, I remembered thinking like, "Ooh, this looks dated." And my timing would have been around the same as Jim's. It would have been around 2013 that I read this, because that's when I got back into comics and was started like really taking a deep dive to learn, because I was going to be writing professionally about this stuff. And I remember picking it up and like just thinking, oh, this is dated, and just like within reading it being like, oh no, this is freaking fantastic. So I always thought it was funny that just quick out of context view of things, like you're like, oh god, this is this. But then when you like let yourself get engulfed in the story and the storytelling of it, you're like, Jesus Christ, this is fantastic. But Drew, I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to add from the art.
Yeah, so just one or two more behind the scenes things about this. So Tom Yates, who had been working on the book, recommended Steve and John for the book, and they were given a tryouts by Lynn Wein. So they wanted to figure out who was going to pencil and who was going to ink. So Lynn gave them a basic script of a page, what happened, and so they had Steven pencil a page, and they had John pencil a page, and they went ultimately with Steve because Steve had a better storytelling way of getting across what's happening on a page as compared to John. So they decided to make Steve penciler, John's the inker, based on that. But and it worked beautifully. And I'll say, if you want to see all the behind the scenes stuff, all the pencils, all the inks, all the notes, the scripts, you got to pick up the Absolute Edition Swamp Thing.
Oh.
Yeah. I've got the.
Oh, is that the one with like the felt cover?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
And I will say the interior colors, the colors for this, for that edition is also different. It's a little more modernized.
Yes.
I hear different opinions.
I love it because Steve Olive did do the colors. Steve Olive came back with all the optics, and they redid the colors. So, and you get to see their tryout pages and everything. You get to see all the monsters, character concepts, and working on all these monsters, all these different designs that they're coming up with. And Steven's kind of telling the behind the scenes stories. You gotta pick this up. If you say you're a Swamp Thing fan, you will own this in your collection.
You will.
Drew, Nadia says, "What's your address, Drew? And leave your doors unlocked." Whoa.
1060. It's 1060 West Addison Street, Chicago, Illinois.
606. Anytime I hear Chicago, Illinois, I go to Scruff McGruff.
Chicago, Illinois.
Chicago, Illinois. 60653. Yeah. Lordy. Max, Jim, either one of you want to add anything else about the art that maybe we didn't cover? Or was there a certain panel or something that you saw throughout the art that you're like, we didn't talk about this, but I loved these aspects?
No, not really for me. I just thought it looked fantastic, and just even the panel that's being shown now, I just love when you have just Swamp Thing just there. He's not even doing anything. I mean, he's there with his eyes closed, and it looks so good. It's so detailed, and really does, without doing anything, makes everything even better because of the story and what he's going through, and really plays that out. I think it's really good.
For sure.
I will say, so I believe it's page 13 of the last issue of the run with Woodrow. But there's the page that I'm looking at, Swamp Thing says, look at all of this. This is not the way of the wilderness. This is the way of man. Your way, Woodrow. The Green did not do this. You did. And Swamp Thing is breaking Woodrow's mind, right? Because Woodrow this whole time,
it's brain.
It's breaking his brain, and his worldview is shattered. So what do the artists do? The panels below that one that Swamp Thing mentions are shattered glass, as Woodrow's face is like, no, that's lies. I spoke to the Green. This is what it told me to do. This is what it's wanted. Like that's his, whole vision. And Swamp Thing has completely shattered his worldview. And so the art speaks to, yes, there you go. Thank you. So the art the paneling of this, the art is gorgeous. Like the line work and the inking and the actual illustrations are
Here's
beautiful.
the recoloring of those pages.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like the recoloring, Drew?
Oh, I love it. I
Really?
really love it. So that's the recoloring. It gives it a darker tone.
Yes.
Oh,
And,
it is
yeah.
darker. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you go through all these pages, Steve Olive, he gives it a very darker tone every single page, and it very much fits the tone of the story. Because going back and seeing the original coloring, like this looks a little light, which is interesting. But you go back and go through here, it's dark and it fits.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think like I said, I think the illustrations themselves are gorgeous. There's no denying that. But looking at it from a graphic design standpoint and a storytelling standpoint and a sequential storytelling standpoint where you're having to think about panels and how you're designing panels and how you're designing page layouts, brilliant. I mean, it's utterly brilliant. So that was one thing that really stuck out to me where I was like, you could have zero dialogue and you would still understand what's going on, so that was one thing.
Penciler. Yeah, that's why Steve was the penciler. He was the better storyteller. And if John had been the penciler, it probably would not have turned out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say too, even when you go to the anatomy lesson, let me see if I can get this pulled up real quick. The way that issue starts and ends with the reflection of Jason Woodrow is telling you the story you're about to go on. So you've got, come on,
Josh, do you think there was any significance there of him starting and ending the issue with "It's raining in Washington"?
Potentially,
because he said
it's kind of bookending it. Yeah, I love that bookending it. Yeah,
right. But I mean, like I could say it's snowing in Denver. And what does that mean, though, right? And I think that there is some sort of significance for him to say it's raining in Washington because...
Well, I think because it's raining blood in the office, because that's where you see the guy... Yeah.
Raining blood in the office, but to revive Swamp Thing, he had to, like, water him, right?
I mean, all he did to revive Swamp Thing was he went through and changed the controls so that
he could
the freezer opened. He de-thawed, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and then he burst back out of his shell. But you've got this panel that we talked about earlier from in the stream, and it's Jason Woodrow in the mirror. And then when we go to the end, and you'll have to bear with me because I'm gonna have to, guesstimate this as best as possible. I love this picture of Woodrow's Floronic Man here because it's creepy as all get out. But when you get to the end, you've got it again, but it's Woodrow. So it's Woodrow as Floronic Man in the panel. And I thought it was fantastic.
It's even creepier here, I think.
Oh man,
adds more color to that face.
That's wild.
Yeah, hold on, I'm bringing you up, Drew.
Oh, you are. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh wow.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot more depth to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of depth in these. Yeah.
The colors in that version are so rich. I'm just like, yeah.
It's really taking a lot of energy not to just
order it. Do it.
Yeah.
Listen,
do it. Buy it.
It is worth it. My thing is like, where the beep am I gonna put that shit, man?
Yeah.
So,
I think I liked this shot right here.
Oh, where he awakens from.
He uproots himself from being rooted. Yeah, comes back alive. Yeah.
But
yeah, no, that's sick.
So
right.
Never
Go
mind.
ahead. Okay.
No. We're going to final thoughts. So
what I'm going to do is we'll go through final thoughts. Sammy, I didn't give you a heads up on this, but I usually try to get people to give me a rating, something out of 10 that they would give the book. So prepare yourself for that. But
thank you.
Let's go through and share our fun. Yeah, Nadia's like, oh, this is so pretty. This was part of the marketing, and I think for a poster.
They made a statue of that. They actually made a statue of this.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So But yeah, I want to go through and just kind of get overall thoughts, final thoughts, and then what you guys would rate this. Drew, I'll go ahead and start with you, and we'll kind of work our way up. So
growing up, as I've gotten older, I've grown to appreciate this run more and more as I've gotten older, especially the more I learn about the making of the production process of this. Just pretty much just the tight deadlines they were meeting, how they were making bare bones money to get this done, all of them. And they produced one of the best looking books that DC Comics had, and it stood out from everything else. And look, I mean, we admit it. There are a couple. There's one or two issues in there. They're not perfect story wise. They're okay with the Shrine of the Silver Monkey thing, but it's still fun, and I love the stuff with the Fly. It's beautiful. They're terrific storytellers. They were a dream team. Steve has even said that he wouldn't change a thing. They turned down other jobs to work on this. They loved it, and it shows. Their love for their craft, for the story, shows in this book, and I gotta give this a 9 out of 10. It's beautiful.
sweet.
Wow.
Max, you're coming in with the whistle. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, because I think I gave Superman for All Seasons a 9 out of 10. I forget. I got to go back and look at that. It was all right. No, I'm kidding. It was
It's fine.
it was good. It was fine. It doesn't do it for me like Fire and Ice from Joanne Starr, but it's
What is?
it'll do it. The Swamp Thing comparatively to like Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville. I don't know, but so if it weren't for probably the last 3 issues, yeah, with what was that Snow Monkey thing? I didn't
Yeah.
know what it
Shrine
was.
of the Silver
Monkey
Monkey.
King.
Yeah.
Monkey King. I think
Monkey
I'd
Shines.
probably now. Granted, this is also a very I just finished this today at lunch on my lunch break. So this is very early on in my reading. So I'd like to go back and read it again where I have more time to digest. I know it's sad, but I think with that, I think the first 3 issues that I read, excluding loose ends, I would probably give it a 9. But because of the loose ends and because of the 3 issues preceding Woodrow, I'd probably give it an 8.5.
Yeah, that's fair.
Still very high praise. I mean, this is just a rich story. It's like eating a 5-star meal, like a steak, comparatively to what we normally read every week from modern books. Like it just feels like a breath of fresh air.
Agreed.
But yeah, so I think it's still a high score for sure.
Jim, what about you, sir?
Yeah, I think I'll go 8.8, just a little under Drew. But I will say that in that and rereading it, I up you, Max. I got finished about 2 minutes before we started. I was going through it. It takes me so long to read.
Yes.
I ended up where I was like, okay, I have this space and time. I know. And I'm like, oh crap. That's why I ended up showing up like right at the time we were starting because I was just finishing. And like Drew, Josh, what Josh said earlier, when I first decided, I like comics, I want to do some review stuff. I did the same thing as Josh did. I ended up saying, okay, I got to read a ton of stuff and some of the big stuff. So this was one of those things that was suggested to me. And I said, when I read that first issue, and I'm with you, Max, the idea of this whole, book 1, it does get a little wonky by the end. It's not like, it ends up, but I do think that if you were listening or if you have to read Anatomy Lesson, if you even like comics, that's a 10. That's like a 10.
Yep.
The other stuff and the Woodrow stuff is great and goes, but then once Etrigan, even though I did like that, it gets a little bit, not as good, but still great. Still compared to anything now, it definitely is, one of the better things that's been done. But really, that Anatomy Lesson deal is when even when you're done this whole, book 1, that you kind of think of that, and that's our discussion was all. Even the other issues were kind of going back to that. It's so well done. Yeah. It's one of the best issues I've read. As a single issue, it's that and like the Coyote Gospel with Grant Morrison and Animal Man and things like that. They really go well together as well. So yeah, I really do like it. Yeah.
Nice.
Dude, the Coyote Gospel.
So good.
Oh yeah, we will definitely get to Animal Man. Like
Yeah.
that'll and look, I'm
Hell
pretty much
yeah.
taking Vertigo as indie books. So just anyone that's like, oh, it's fucking DC, yeah, suck it.
Yeah.
I
Real
have,
quick
a signed,
before
I have a
yeah.
signed Grant Morrison copy of that. He signed it on the inside at a Comic Con.
Oh,
t-shirt.
wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
got
it's
it framed on the
amazing.
wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I get to Sammy, I do have to turn to the chat real quick. So Nadia came with a few chats that I want to highlight. So one is she said this is one of her favorite book. Well, one of my favorite books, bro. So
Bro.
hell yeah.
But
She's
before you go on, flawless Nadia impression, by the way.
thank you.
Nailed it.
Thank you. Yes.
Spot on.
She also mentioned that she's going to be doing a giveaway for this book next Tuesday with the original movie. So
Nice.
make sure you go check out Horror with Nads. She's got a
Nice.
great channel going. She's growing super fast, and I'm stoked for her. So go support her and check it out. But she also came in with 5 gifted memberships. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. The channel's growing. We've got new stuff coming. It's all in the works. Max is relaunching his stuff, and I don't know. I think we both kind of were on the same wavelength because we had a conversation going into 2025, and I was like, I just want to be more intentional, and I think part of that falls into us with these channels. But Nadia, I appreciate the support. I appreciate your friendship even more than that. And for the 5 gifted memberships, I will give you. What do we want to play? Let's see. Oh, you know what? Since Nadia's here, I feel like I have to play this one.
Good boy. Good boy.
There's some Henry Cavill for you, Nadia. I appreciate it. Okay, Sammy, go ahead and share your final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 9. I do think this is truly just like a perfect storm of just creativity. And just like we said earlier, just a wonderful time in comics. And I'm positive this couldn't happen today with just the way things are. Unfortunately, I've always been infatuated with this character. I remember seeing the original movie on a rainy day up north at my uncle's cabin. We were, just kind of stuck inside and thinking it's cool. I remember the Saturday morning cartoon, which I watched a little bit of this morning on YouTube to try and get me in the mood. Didn't get me in the mood. It's not the same thing. Yeah, this is great. Although I did enjoy that they took the song Wild Thing and turned it into Swamp Thing.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That was but yeah, no, this is just awesome. It lays down the foundation for a lot of really, really awesome concepts in DC, whether we know it or not. Just simply things like the green. I know we didn't get to like the Parliament of Trees or anything like that. Really, really like it. All these characters get a glow up. I was doing research. So in House of Secrets, his first appearance, I didn't realize that Swamp Thing was supposed to take place at like turn of the century.
Yeah.
So it was, but it was also a different character. So it wasn't.
Yeah, it was
Alex,
Alexander.
Alex.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, I mean, but so very, very much a Jekyll and Hyde thing that they initially kind of wanted to do. Yeah, this is just phenomenal from the writing to the art, and I think it fundamentally changed ways that people perceive comics. And Alan Moore is no slouch, man. Everything that we talked about. There's other writers that can do similar things, but like I said, I think this is probably one of the greatest retcons in comic books ever. So
agreed. Yeah, I'm gonna come in. I think there's a lot of good to take here. I will kind of agree with Max and Jim that there are moments where it's not a perfect book, and that's okay. But I like how ballsy Alan Moore was with it, and I like that he wasn't afraid to come in and just kind of go balls to the wall with some of this stuff. I agree. Loose ends is a little bit of a hard pill to swallow if you haven't been reading what came prior to this, and it can be something that might derail people from jumping into this run. I think thankfully this book has enough of a reputation that people will get past it. But if you're one of those that read the first issue and were like, oh, I don't know, that just keep reading, keep going. I'll also agree that the stuff with Jason Woodrow I thought was fantastic. The second story with Etrigan, not so. I mean, I loved Etrigan, but the Monkey King and stuff, not my favorite. It was good, but not great. So for me, I would bring this in at an 8 out of 10. And I think the good thing here is like it's called Saga of the Swamp Thing for a reason. Like you have 6 dense trades of just storytelling that just continues to grow and grow and grow and build on itself. So great stuff. And I can't wait to get to the future volumes in the future. So
I can't wait till
damn it.
to the
You know
next
what we
arc.
didn't mention is this is one of the first comics to just say screw you to the comic book code of authority. And
not exactly. There's a lot of behind the scenes drama with the Comic Code Authority on this.
Yeah. But I will say I do think this is
eventually that yes they do. Eventually several issues down after they get to this, after they pass the second annual, then they do ditch it and go to Vertigo. But early on, especially when we get to when they're in hell and what they do to there's a lot of behind the scenes drama with the Comic Code.
Yeah. So it's a little tease there. We go to hell with Swamp Thing. I will say too, though, I think this is one of the first examples of writers coming in and really pushing this idea of no comics can be more than what you think they are, and really trying to like push the limits from a writing standpoint, from an artistic standpoint, to elevate it. Because even at this time, there was still very much a comics are for kids type mentality.
Well, not just that, but these guys were trying to impress the higher ups, trying to impress other people because they were new. They were newbies, pretty much.
Yeah, completely agree. All right, dudes, we are going to wrap up the night. So I'm going to go through each one of you and let you guys share your channels or your sites, talk about what you do, get that plug in. All of the links for these guys are in the description, as I mentioned earlier. But Sammy, where can people find you, man?
I'm Sammy 3Pete. You can find me on Twitter at Sammy 3Pete. You can find me on YouTube. I've been in the YouTube circle for a little bit, but I'm finally ready to start doing my own stuff. So for the last 3 months, I've been doing a show called In Other News. That's every Sunday. That's where I get people in the pop culture sphere, and we cover stories that have nothing to do with the culture war or upcoming projects. It's just a place to like decompress because, what are you going to, you want to talk about, let's talk about things that stupid people did all over the world and just laugh at them. But I also have a new podcast I'm going to launch called Cavecast. And that is, I've been going back doing a bunch of research, and I'm going to take a very academic approach to the lore of Batman. And my goal was anyone who's interested in comics, they don't know where to start, I am going to be taking it step by step. So episode 1 is going to be about Gotham and like all its iterations, its history. Episode 2's to be Batman, Bruce Wayne, the history of that. Like even before the Waynes got murdered and he was just bored socialite Bruce Wayne. Just little things like that. Episode 3, probably the Cave or the Batmobile, or maybe I'll combine those. But I'm saying it's going to be a very academic approach. And then eventually I'm going to get some panels going. We'll take it villain by villain, and, just character by character. And I've gotten a lot of good reception on the things that I've been doing so far. So I'm hoping to get that dropped in early February. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I listened to a lot of Batman podcasts, but I haven't seen one that's kind of doing the take that I'm doing on this. So
nice.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, dude, I'm looking forward to it as well. I know we did a stream together on Gooch's channel, and that's when I was like, oh, I got to get Sammy on for my book club when I started. So super happy you're here. I thought you brought a nice energy. So
thank you so much. I was very, very happy to be here, and especially to discuss this with you guys. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds sick, man. It also sounds like a very systemic approach to looking at that.
Yeah,
Like very
yeah,
just objective, like, all right, if you're gonna start, we have to understand a few things. And like it sounds like you said you're coming about it from an approach of not just like Batman was created by Bob Kane and Bill or
yeah.
like whatever. It's just like, no, let's take a look at like what are some of the themes or what are some of the
Mhm.
like you said, very objective and researched base approach. So that's rad, man. I like that a lot. That's cool.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I think it all started. I have a young nephew who's just now like starting to ask me like questions like, oh yeah, about Batman. And it's like, why does Spider-Man wear a mask? And I was like, all right, we're gonna take this. You know, it's gonna be a little bit higher higher caliber than if I'm speaking to a 4-year-old. But I was going like, oh, that's an idea. Like, you know, it was like, I will give normies a PhD in Batman.
Yeah.
And
I have a real life experience with this where I was at work one day and people that work with me knew I was a big Batman fan. And one was like, "Hey, do you think Robin's cool?" And I went, "Which Robin?"
yeah,
And they went, "What do you mean?" And the moment the words "What do you mean" came out of their mouth, you could tell they were like, "Fuck." Because it was like, you're getting a lecture for the next 2 hours in between customers. We're going over this.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, I think it'll be great. And you're right. I haven't seen anyone taking that approach, and I think it'll be nice to kind of go that route. But also to, especially in this day, you have some people who are like, "Oh, Batman is this or Batman is that." It'll be fun to kind of cover the history of Batman. Like he's had so many different iterations that
yeah, you know, and there, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that's how when you said the Robin thing, that's how I felt was like when I said, "So is Swamp Thing like a good guy or a bad guy?" Like I knew exactly as the words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, no, that's not what I wanted to say.
It's a valid question.
No, it is a valid question.
And that's the thing. And I thought it created a great conversation. And that's why you were like, I'm going to sit back. I was like, the hell you are. You're not going to bitch out on me, Max von Priestley. I'm going to go ahead and kick it to Jim. So, Jim, I think you cover more comics than I think you accurately cover more comics than anyone I know. Because you don't kiss ass, you just give honest reviews, which are impossible to find now.
If you see us drop this from the review copies, then they'll get us
it
back
happens
and drop us and get us back. It's ridiculous. But
it happens to the best of us. What can I say?
Now, one of the things I want to say, what you said about Batman and Robin, the reason I got into comics, I ended up switching jobs and started working with the guy Eric that I do the DC stuff with, and I was at work. And the new 52 book, the Earth 2 book, was out. And the big news was that Green Lantern was gay. And a bunch of people came in and he had Green Lantern stuff, but we hadn't really talked. I had just started this job. I had to work. And in the real way, I was being trained by him to replace him because they wanted to fire him, which they never did. But the idea that these people kept coming in and saying, "Oh, I heard your Green Lantern's gay." And he kept saying, "Which one?" Well, like, and he knew what the deal was, but he kept saying, and what he would do is like, "Which one?" You see, there's more. And he started talking to me about the Green Lantern stuff. And I like, okay, you know, and that we suddenly started talking. And then I kept asking him. Now, in the meantime, he had not read anything New 52 because he was pissed off about the continuity and all that stuff. And then I got into it. And then actually me getting into it got him back into it. And then we started doing it. But it was kind of funny when you said that about Batman and Robin. But yeah, I mean, you could go and check out our YouTube channel. It's Weird Science Comics. Also, we have a podcast and sites. The podcast, we actually have the 10-year anniversary. We end up, I think this coming week, it's episode 574. And we've never missed a week. Wow. We've never missed a week since we started. Wow. And in fact, as a deal, at one point for over a year, the weekly podcast was over 10 hours long. It was insane. And people don't believe me, and you can go check it. We had one episode that was 14 hours, and we would record it in one sitting. We would just record, and it was crazy. And I mean, that one, we started at like 7 at night and recorded till like 8 the next morning. And I almost cried when the sun came up. And it's all like but that's what we ended up doing. It kind of, got our name. And I said one of the things was, if you actually listen to some idiots talking for 13 hours, you kind of have to convince yourself that you're a fan, kind of, because you went through that. But I also just want to mention too that with all that, I also have a channel that has dirty songs, and that and that and the whole play, I could go on and on about the comic stuff, but yet my dirty song channel is about to hit 37,000 subscribers, and that seems to be where all the hype's at. But yeah, it's Sus Records if you want to check that out as well. A lot of dirty songs, mainly stuff from like parodying stuff from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, kind of thing like that. It's
Is Sus Gabe the CEO of Sus Records?
No, he isn't. But I should mention that if you want to read written reviews on our sites, it's Weird Science, DC Comics and Weird Science, Marvel Comics, and that's Sus Gabe, because I gave up that nonsense a while ago. I'd rather record stuff.
Same.
The idea is that written reviews, a lot of people don't realize, if you try to do them well, it does take quite some time. It takes some time. So if you do multiple books in a night, your night's all shot. And I'd rather record stuff. I kind of enjoy that more. And plus, you get more of a, in touch with people, especially on YouTube, things like that.
Agreed. I will second that on the work that goes. If you write, strong reviews, it's a lot of work, and to the point that you start feeling like you're working harder than the writer of the comic, because you're like,
I think that's why I gave up. I actually thought, like, I care more about this than they do, so screw it.
Yep.
And
absolutely
the recordings.
But yeah, if you love comics and want to stay in touch with what's current, definitely go check out his channel and his site. Another person to keep up with is Mr. Max Von Priestley, now with 3 channels. So we'll start with the one that's kind of been there and kind of been your bread and butter so far, Comics Crusader. A lot of what you've covered has been comic related, and you're going to keep that going with strictly a comics focus. You have I'm just doing the announcements for you. You have your Warhammer channel that is relatively new, that you've kind of got the ball rolling on, which you're going to educate us plebes that don't know anything about Warhammer, because you felt stupid asking questions. That's going to be me in the near future.
Oh yeah, I'll hop on that.
Let's go. Yeah.
I need to learn.
Same. And then you kind of took your Max's Man Cave, what we had kind of talked about with life things, and you kind of moved it over and made it its own channel, and that's Max Von Priestley. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's something fun and creative that, like, I don't know if any of these are going to work out, right? And that's kind of the weird thing about YouTube, is like, you don't know really how people are going to engage with your entertainment or your creative product. You make a video and sometimes you think it's going to resonate with everyone, and it gets like 2 views. And then the video that you made overnight at like 2 o'clock in the morning, that you're like, I just have to do something, right? I'll just get it out. It sucks. I just need to make something. Gets like 10,000 views. Like who there's really no real rhyme or reason, but I like having these 3 because it gives me a creative outlet in each. And I have, unfortunately, creative ADHD, where there will be like a week or 2 where I'm like so hyper focused on Warhammer and like the lore and the comics, and so I'll be like, I want to make this, like, I want to do a video right now. But then there are others where, like this week, I was infatuated with Swamp Thing, and so like I was learning more about the creative team, and I was trying to understand Alan Moore's like understanding of superheroes and stuff like that. So all that being said, yeah, the Comic Crusader will be fun because it'll be like sci-fi, fantasy, pop culture, comics. Then the Warhammer channel is just Warhammer, and then the Maxfield Von Priestley channel will be just kind of a really just me kind of going through life and asking questions about culture, masculinity, family, values, religion, all this stuff. And I think those are all really big questions, but stuff that I just want to ask and talk to people about, because I think those are all really interesting worldviews, and where they get those. So I, like I said, all of this could fail and I may not do any of it, but the fact that I have the option to do so will be kind of fun. So yeah.
Well, Max, you can take solace in one thing, and do you know what that is?
No.
it will be more successful than your dating life. Okay, on
That's
to
true. That's true.
Kidding.
Damn.
I love you. I love
It's
you. Oh,
it's actually replacing my dating life, and I'm like, you know what? Screw dating. I'm just gonna do creative stuff now.
yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Sammy's coming in with the damn, but Sammy doesn't know the history of me giving Max shit for his dating life. Just because I love Max.
Fair enough.
Last but not least, we have Drew. And Drew, I think you've got some stuff to showcase, correct?
That is correct. I sent you some images. I'm hoping you got them.
Yeah.
So next week, MegaCon is coming up. So with TCM Press, we just announced these for all three of my titles with TCM Press: Silent Knights, Depths of Valor, and Holy Nightmare. We got 3 exclusives. For Silent Knights, we got Jamie Tyndall, and for Depths of Valor, we got Jian Jiang, and for Unholy Nightmare, we got my boy Vu Don on exclusives.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we've seen this black and white of Vu's work, but we haven't seen this red colored cover, which is kind of
That's going to be a foil edition, the red.
Yeah.
So.
Hell yeah.
It's cool.
So again, we just got to look at this line work and that pencil work because that's insane.
He did it all by hand. He is amazing.
Wow.
And not to knock the other 2 covers, they're great. I love this color for Depths of Valor, and I think it works incredibly well with that story. And bringing the sexy for Silent Nights.
Yeah, Jamie Tyndall, he knows what he's doing.
So yeah, good stuff. You got a lot of stuff going on. So you've got those 3, and then you have the preview coming out as well at MegaCon.
Yep.
So
Yeah, for Aftermath. Yeah,
Yep.
that's going to be at the Comic Kingdom Creative. So yeah, we got a lot of stuff there next week.
you're gonna be a busy little beaver in Orlando.
Yes.
As for myself, we are here pretty much every Tuesday. Sometimes we shake things up to keep you on your toes, and we steal Max's time slot on Friday nights and tell him to, go kick it to the curb. But we have some fun stuff coming up. So next Tuesday, actually, the next book club for next month is gonna be Batman Year One. So we're kind of doing a rotation of DC Marvel Indie, DC Marvel Indie. We started our DC with Superman for All Seasons. We're gonna do Batman, kind of do another introduction story. And just a little hint that when we get back to DC again, it's probably going to be a Wonder Woman origin story. But yeah, this is the book that almost kicked off the entire series, and this is what I was originally going to go with. And when I was talking about what did I want to do with the book club, and I was talking with Max, really kind of going through things, I was like, you know what? I feel like I need to do something that has more heart to the story, and that's why we went with Superman for All Seasons. But so our next book club is going to be Batman Year One. Hopefully you've read it. If you haven't, go pick it up, go read it, get ready. We're coming. Other than that, next Tuesday, it's going to be Drew and I. We're going to be coming in with our top 5 comics of, fucking A. I don't even know my own schedule. The next video coming out is Marvelous Monday X-Men 2000. So we finally have that releasing. When I talked about this last time, Drew was like, how long ago did we film that? And I'm like, shut the fuck up, dude. But it is finally coming out. I'm excited to get back into this with Shield Wall, Drew, and Nadia, because I have so much fun doing these videos. And it's just fun perspectives. Like, if you haven't watched one of these, I've got a history of working in Los Angeles with film and television, so I'm kind of bringing my script background to this. Drew's history in working comics, he brings a certain element to this. Nadia worked special effects and makeup for comics, so she brings that in. And then Shield Wall, if you've never watched anything with Shield Wall of Dragons, this guy is like this, secret X factor, brings so much knowledge, so much just intel to things.
I don't know where they grew him.
I don't either. And the guy's like, if you talk to him, he's like, yeah, I'm surprised you guys keep asking me to be on shows. Like, I'm just like this old fart. And like, dude, you like come in and you say shit. And I'm like, I never in my life would have thought about talking about this. But
I was on a panel with him on Zach's channel. We were discussing Shogun. Yeah. And then he was like, well, I lived in Japan for 4 years. And I was like, yes. What are you talking about?
Really starts going into detail about shit. Like, it's wild. The stuff that he knows.
Yeah, I was worried about like describing the characters' names correctly. And then he's like, no, this is a custom that people used to do in the 1600s. I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to leave.
We're good. So that will be coming up the first one in February. And then that Tuesday, we will be doing top 5 comics of January 2025. So I'm looking forward to that. And you know, it's always fun for Drew and I to prove we don't know how to count. So
Yeah.
good times. But that is pretty much it for the night. I want to thank everyone for coming. I'm going to thank the panel. Yeah, George, Batman Year One is a classic. I completely agree. But yeah, I had a great time. We're going to wrap things up so my East Coasters can go to bed. I can walk my dog, take a shower, and go to bed. And then this is, you know, a bum, so he can go to bed. Sammy might stay up all night. Who knows? You never know with Sammy 3P.
No,
But
I don't know.
gentlemen,
I'm
thank
thinking
you
about
all
going
for...
on Tubi and watching the Swamp Thing show right now.
Hey, the show wasn't that bad. It
Show was
really,
great. I couldn't believe
Yeah.
it got canceled.
it was surprisingly way better than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, thanks again, you guys. I love what you brought to the table. You know, you guys have a lot of great insights and always good conversations. So thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And we will see y'all next month.